Good morning, audience. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Warren World's Act of Repair and Threads of Peace in the wake of discard. As today, we are facing a lot of challenges with colonial waste, most probably, from probably not using your textiles properly. And we're seeing cultures being gone along the wind. And today, let's see a lot more. What can you say, Faiza?
That's right, because Ati Eman, I would just like to first welcome each and everyone here. We're so happy that we could have our guests from DepEd Iligan. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So unfortunately, we don't have other guests here, but Alhamdulillah, we're being broadcasted live to you at the Marina Cultural Heritage Center official page. So for those who are not able to attend right now, they would have the opportunity to, of course, learn from our dear guests coming from New York.
New York City. And
Yes.
I think that this is an opportunity that sees the reality of what we're facing right now, Faiza. That no matter what happens and no matter how important this event is, even if there's only little audience, there are still people who cares, and that is why this initiative exists, and this is why we will live on with this initiative.
That is right.
Exactly.
So maybe before we move on to learning and introducing our dear guests, for of course our newcomers from DepEd Iligan, and of course for our live audience, maybe we could present there, because our audience actually prepared a
Wow,
film
interesting.
screening for us, so that we could learn more about the initiative and maybe learn and get to be introduced more to the art that they're trying to advocate.
I think that would be amazing.
Yes. So of course, once again, welcome each and every one of you to the One World's Acts of Repair and Threads of Peace in the wake of discard. So in that, we will have here our film screening. Please sit down and just enjoy the show.
The Panay Bukidnon, also known as the Panayanon or Tumandok, are a vibrant indigenous group with a rich cultural heritage. They inhabit the mountainous regions of Capiz, Antique, and Iloilo in Panay Philippines. Known for their unique traditions and customs, the Panay Bukidnon people have preserved their ancient practices despite the modernization of the surrounding areas. One of the most famous aspects of Panay Bukidnon culture is their sugilan. These are epic tales passed down through generations that tell of heroic deeds and mythical creatures. These stories are often performed through dramatic recitations, showcasing the artistic expression of the Panay Bukidnon people. They are also recognized for their traditional Binanok dance, a lively and rhythmic performance that celebrates their connection to nature and ancestral spirits. The dancers wear colorful costumes adorned with flames and beads, moving in harmony to the beat of the drums, gongs, and chimes. The Binanok practice is also attributed to them, wherein selected young women are supposed to be kept away from society to preserve their purity and virtue. As such, they are able to master panubok or traditional embroidery. This video will focus on the art of panubok, or intricate embroidery, a skill passed down through generations. It showcases the craftsmanship and attention to detail of the Panay Bukidnon people. derived from the term tubok. This exquisite embroidery technique reflects the intricate patterns and the designs that are inspired by the natural surroundings of their homeland. The skilled artisans carefully weave their creativity into traditional garments, bracelets, and other items. Beyond being a form of artistic expression, the book serves as a symbol of the deep connection between the Panay Bukidnon people and the environment that surrounds them. The intricate designs not only reflect their unique creativity, but also highlights the astuteness of their ancestors in observing and appreciating the beauty of nature. The pattern inspired from the mountain ranges is called Girigiti. Matang Punay is the eye of the native pigeon. Sumikama is the skin of the python snake. Skansikag depicts fish bones. Pako-pako are the edible ferns. And bulak are flowers and more. Panubok designs that were once confined to the ceremonial garments and traditional attires of the Panay Bukidnon people has made its way in the modern era as these artisans ingeniously adopted this respected and treasured craft to breathe new life into unexpected canvases as they integrate their panibok designs and the clothing they find in ukay-ukay stores to make it distinctively their own. Rene Lavilla, along with Romel Castor, Nerissa Castor, Marilyn Arroyo, Rafael Diaz, Alaisa Castor, and Dinah Parley as they embellished second-hand clothes from an ukay-ukay store. Ukay-ukay refers to the practice of searching through piles of used garments until finding a desirable item. It is also the term used for retailers selling pre-loved clothing and accessories in the Philippines. They opted for ukay-ukay due to its affordability and the good quality of its fabrics. However, they sometimes worry about the presence of bacteria in these clothes, which could potentially make them ill. For Renel, ukay-ukay was more than just a place to buy clothes. It was a symbol of his mother's love and sacrifices. Every piece of clothing his mother brought home was carefully chosen with him in mind, ensuring that he had everything he needed to feel confident and stylish. To this day, Renel still shops at ukay-ukay stores, not out of necessity, but out of a deep-rooted connection to his past. Each time he walks into a thrift store, he's reminded of his mother's unwavering love and dedication to providing for him in the best way she could. For this group of artisans, the affordability and accessibility of these ukay items, together with their meticulous craftsmanship, provide an additional livelihood stream while promoting their cultural heritage.
As an immigrant, part of the Filipino diaspora, I have, like any other immigrants, when they leave home, they carry with them some sense of responsibility to help their families back home, and that's what I try to remind myself, to advocate for something that I'm very familiar and passionate about, and that is waste. Environmental justice is a pressing issue that we need to be advocating for. And it could also be fun and accessible. It can be done through the lens of culture by integrating the concepts of balikbayan, bayanihan, and also seeing that through the lens of arts through public art exhibits and community-based arts and creative placekeeping efforts in Little Manila for the Filipinos in New York City. We named the project as Ukay. It's a play of the word Ukay Ukay. Implementation of the project is we want to connect it with something that's familiar to Filipinos. We intended to replicate that feeling of being in an ukay-ukay in the Philippines and bring that to Little Manila. It was also important to demonstrate some level of community power and ownership. And so that's the concept that we wanted to integrate with having a clothing swap in Little Manila. That is, we close on a street and have folks gather with each other and make meaningful connections. And clothing swap is really one of many ways to divert textile waste from landfills. Here in Woodside, Queens. Behind me is the Salvation Army. It's a very well attended thrift shop. When you step inside, you'd find how vibrant the micro secondhand economy is, and you'd find different kinds of people from different walks of life. I went to Salvation Army Woodside for an ethnographic research. I stayed there for an entire weekend and just observed and taking notes and talking to people. When folks go there, they buy stuff, and then the used items, they get reused. They get diverted from landfills. Thrift shopping really helps. Ukay-ukay really helps. It keeps secondhand clothes in circulation. They're given second lives, second identities. But if they're in such large volumes, thrift shopping can only do so much, and it's not really up to the thrift shoppers, the individual citizens, to help recycle or reuse the clothes.
I did nursing for 2 years.
We're running a mending and repair clinic, inviting people to come with their well-loved clothes, teaching them how they can repair them. I love it. You're doing a visible mend. Let me take just a peek under there.
Oh, that
so
would
you
be
could
really
do a nice basting sit. We're trying to encourage people, instead of throwing out clothing that could be repaired and have more life, to give their clothes more life. Countries like the Philippines take in those secondhand goods or waste, and we end up getting to have like an out of sight, out of mind attitude.
There's this concept called waste colonialism. It's when developed countries like the US send their waste, like electronics, plastics, or textile waste, to less developed nations, which end up burdening their waste infrastructure. It's a way for rich countries to shift the burden of the waste problem to a nation like the Philippines.
this event was also data collection for us. As we were collecting clothes for the clothing swap, we were also collecting data on the material content, the brand, the type of clothing, to do a little experiment to see what type of clothes people aren't wearing anymore or are willing to give up to something like a clothing swap.
So today what we're going to be focusing on is creating a balikbayan box. The balikbayan box is a practice that we have in the Philippines where we package the box with material goods such as spam, food, hygiene, and clothes, and we use it as an act of love to our families who are back home in the Philippines. Take the concept of this balikbayan box and think about the return home, not just in a physical sense, but in a symbolic sense, in a way to come back home to ourselves. How do we treat ourselves and
I dream of what kind of lives we could create now if we could go back. There's a Filipino myth about a bird that had to fly for a really long time until she landed, and that's how the islands were created. I think of a bird carrying her home and flying in search of a home.
Embroidery is an art form that has been part and parcel of communities in the Philippines going back centuries. There are textiles here which have been embroidered by indigenous folks in the Philippines, and they symbolize where you're from, who your people are. They might be sewn into garments as a means of protection. For me, I'm always having my red on the right side, right on the right side.
You're keeping things around for longer. You're learning to love the things you already have. You're adding little pieces of yourself and learning the clothing doesn't stop at manufacture. When you own it, you get to do whatever you want with it. That includes making it your own and making it beautiful, and then you don't want to throw it away because it's yours.
options. So that provides access to people with less capabilities, purchasing power, to actually acquire certain things.
Actually, I started when I signed for my last company 2012. So I started retailing. Ganito, basahan, MRTW, mga ganon. Kasi sabihin natin na salip na itapon na lang agad nila yung damit nila o pinaglumaan, pwede na itong gawing basahan, natatagal pa talaga. Ukay-ukay, yung mga pre-lab na bibigay mo. Kung hindi mo na kailangan, may kailangan na iba. Di ba? Tapos ito, yung mga hindi kailangan, sabihin natin, yung mga big companies nga, sa sinabi ko, hindi na nila kailangan yun yung mga reta-reta. So, kasi syempre, yung machine nila, kinot lang nila yung para dun sa gagawin na pattern. So, sa halip na itapon nila, i-ano lang nila, discard lang nila kung saan-saan, sa bebenta nila, may nagagawa pa ng ibang tao na pagkakitaan.
I actually agree that we shouldn't be importing second-hand clothes into the Philippines to be sold. So if they're going to be donated directly for direct use of other people, I think that's fine. Because that means that there's already like a place for it to go and it's not gonna go to a landfill, right? But if the intention is to kind of just bring it here and then it's up to the sellers to actually figure out a way to dispose of it eventually if it doesn't get sold, then I think that just creates more waste. So for one, I think that because many of these products are so cheap, it still kind of encourages overconsumption. So, because it's so cheap, people might not really consider if they want the garment, but just think about, I don't mind spending another 50 pesos or 70 pesos. So, yeah. Of the value, like the value that it teaches, I think it's not ideal.
Yan, focus na ang aming 150 na sapatos. Why 150? Focus na po yan. Collaboration, Alexander Sir. Wow. Yan namin. Jordan 1, Puma Soy, mga ganyan sa Superstar. Yan mga sir, makikita namin. SB, yan, Nike SB, ganyan sir. Jordan 1, go plus. Ganyan, Air Force sir. Air Force. Ano yan sir? Yun ay, ano ba, George. Pinapamahal yan sir, pag sa brand nyo, 200, mahigit 200,000. Pag sa mga brand nyo na original. Yan, PlayStation sir, nasa taas yan. Yan sir, ayan.
Collaboration ng PlayStation. Ano yun?
Tulad po siya ng ano, nandun po yung pangalan. PlayStation ang tawag dyan, tulad. Tulad ito. Huwag nyo lang tanongin sir, makikita dyan. Ayan o. Basta pang masa lang ko. Umiira siya, tulad siya.
Magkano ang benta niyo nito?
Ito na lang kayo babawi sir eh. 2.5 pero may bawal pa. Nakukuha ng 12. Then na kami babawi sa pang basketball kasi mahal din to. Ang punan. Pero sa mga iba, murang-mura pang masa. Pero sa iba, mas mahal pa yan. Mas mura na sa akin.
Ganun talaga ang buhay ng basurahan. Dito yung opisina ko. Opisina ng repair shoes. Pinipinturahan, konti, limbawa may gas-gas, konti kasi leader niya. Kasto mo lang basit. Oo. Kaya mura rin ang paninda ko kasi maraming
Agdadait kayo pa, auntie?
una, dagdait, ito niya, dagdagong, nagadong, lahat yan tinatahi. Pag may pupunta dito, titrain mo na magbabras, ganon, ganito ang gawin mo. Ibras mo, lagyan mo ng kloros yung puti, yung hindi ko kloroksan, ganon. Maraming ginagawa, kaya ang hirap din talaga, mahirap din talaga. Agasam nga dyan, manungat taon ko tunagtugtuga, masakit na rin yung paa ko, hindi na i-exercise. Oo, kaupo lagi. Yun din ang nakita ko na pakain ko yung mga anak ko. Ay, sis, makasangsangit ang lutan. Ano ba yun? Tapos, nung nakapag-aral ng mga anak ko, yan, isang nurse at saka isang, ano ba yun, stewardess? Si Bebs. Oo. Kaya kung maalala ko na, ay, iyak ako kasi ang pagod at saka servisyo. Ganun. Akala ko naman hindi ako dumating ng ganito. Nakarating naman ako ng ganito ngayon, kaya tinuturoan ko yung mga anak ko na ganito rin ang business nila. Yung 3 kong anak yan, naturuan ko na rin yung pangalan ko. Yun, nurse yan masakit nga ang kalooban ko sana na ituturo ko yan. Nurse na yung anak ko, ganon. Pero, kaya siya lang ang nurse na naging nag-ukay-ukay. Kaya tinitignan ko pa lang kung kaya niya talaga. Mag-2 taon na, kaya niya naman talaga. Masusuportahan niya naman yung expenses na sa bahay. Mas gusto na niya dito.
This one came out. This one easy as well. There's an Adidas Yeezy. So that one came out, and then there's another one type of Yeezy that went down. This one. Yeah, I'm a registered nurse. But during that time, I went to the UK and worked as a coordinator. So I coordinate care in some places.
Were you working during COVID?
Yes, we were. And yes, it is so hard because you're the frontliners, and it's just. And that's the time I realized that, why am I doing this? I said, like, what if there's another pandemic coming? Yeah. So that's when I said, like, yeah, let's go back to the Philippines. Let's see what's exciting, and let's try a new venture.
And your regrets leaving nursing?
No, not really, because I'm with my family.
Pasok ko dito. Ganyan ang budigan namin. Aray ko. Yan ang pamilya na rin. Panindan niya rin yan. Si anak kong panganay. Ito, yan. Nagitan stuck na pan di pwesto.
This is my stock room.
Oo. Stock mo't ni kwa.
Yeah, this is going to the market.
Dito ang stock niya pa. Aray ko, silang sa. Ay. Kita puro sapatos. Wala na. Kasi naragsakak mo't nga na sirak kasi dyan. Lagiti kakaanak ak uray sirak mo't agpanaw damat lapta. Siyempre dito damin sir ko narigat nga talaga. Night halos di night nagsakripisyo ka kasi. Nang kaag-sakripisyo, baka awan nga talaga narigat. Pero siya, pakita ka na kita anak ko, oray baka takong tata, agsak-sakripisyo akpay lang, tapno tikas tangay kat, oray nung isursuruak man isuda, kat naman sa dugda, at least adan tulag-lagi punta kanyak. Ay, kasi tingkas kasta ni mama, ibigay lang gamin, panpanamutok mo kada gito yung dito.
Wow. Those were the films that were prepared to us by our guests. So I have to say, Ate Iman, parang after watching the films, I just had a realization that I never really saw ukay in like that kind of light, no?
Apparently, ukay-ukay is something more than just clothing. It's more than just shops. It's more than just hangers that's being thrown around.
Yeah.
And alam mo, Faiza, while I was sitting down there, I felt like I can't breathe.
Why?
Just
Why?
because I felt like ang bigat sa damdamin. It's so heavy that people have to suffer, or like certain countries have to suffer just because people are somehow irresponsible or can't think of alternatives.
Yes, so that's why it's really important that we're really diving into it and seeing it as something that we need to solve, to something that we need to give an alternative of, so that we do not like really mobilize these kinds of ideas na it's okay pala to be the dump of the global north.
Somehow socio-economic challenges can be something good.
So really, this is really an important event for us to like learn from and attend, because this is where we realize that like the new okay shops at Comcen are not just things that tickles our souls.
Exactly.
Like, oh my God.
Matanong natin, let's ask them, sino dito nag-ukay? Raise your hands.
Five for 100.
Wednesday, every Wednesday, 100 for 10 pieces.
Alam mo sa ating inaabangan ko talaga.
Favorite ko, the Comcent area sa may Tatas Burger, top tier ukay.
Kaya friends, visit na kayo.
In-advertise pa. So yeah, again, to our audience, welcome. To our DepEd guests, to our also fellow Unicas, welcome for today's event.
And of course, we also have a fellow like taga-university, ang mga taga-OP. Yes, well, hello po ma'am. Thank you so much for gracing us this day. Because so I think we could learn more from what is this initiative really about, of course, from our dear speakers. So let's try to get to know them, especially for those who are not able to join us in the previous parts of our program.
Exactly. So let us start with our first guest that I will be introducing to you. This person is a trans-Filipino photographer and filmmaker based in Brooklyn, New York. He cut his teeth in the streets, documenting and organizing with the Filipino National Democratic Movement and the WOW Project, a women, queer, and trans-led community initiative that uses art and activism to protect an NYC Chinatown's culture. In 2017, he started a portrait project of queer Asian Americans, which inevitably led him into the nightlife and drag scenes in New York. Informed by his own experience as a trans person of color, Marian uses his camera to immortalize queer joy as a form of liberation. Let us welcome on stage Marian Aguas.
Yeah. Yes. So, of course, the one who graced us yesterday at tinuruan po talaga tayo ng iba't ibang klase ng embroidery works. Of course, coming from Panay Bukidnon. Let us introduce Mr. Rinel Eslavella. He is a member of the Panay Bukidnon indigenous community in Central Panay Island, Western Visayas, Philippines. He specializes in crafting traditional instruments such as the subing, litgit, tulali, and tikombo, and is also a skilled binano dancer, panobok embroidery artist, and musical accompanist on the agong and tambor. In 2024, he received the Gawad sa Gabay para sa mga katutubo from the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, as well as recognition from the National Commission for Indigenous Peoples for his work in preserving indigenous cultural integrity. He currently serves as a cultural researcher for the Capiz Provincial Indigenous People's Mandatory Representative. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, Rinel Lavella. Ayan, kaway-kaway naman po, Sir Rinel. Ayan, siya po ay nagturo sa atin ng iba't ibang klase ng panubok art yesterday.
Exactly. Now, of course, we're not going to be stopping short in there. Let us also introduce to you another event and another guest. She is a textile artist and a climate activist whose work centers on reuse, upcycling, and waste mitigation. With a background in costume technology on Broadway in New York City, She brings a deep understanding of textiles and sewing to her work. Abby holds a master's degree in sustainability and currently works with Jersey Solution, where she supports textile waste reduction through innovative cleaning and repair service. Let us give a round of applause to Miss Abby Manueller.
Yes, hello, Miss Abby. Of course, Miss Abby will Jacqueline Reyes she is an interdisciplinary artist, culture organizer, and PhD student in social welfare at the Graduate Center for the City University of New York. She earned her BFA in art photography from Syracuse University and her master's degree in arts in education from Harvard University. Once again, Miss Jacqueline Reyes. Wow! Ayan, nakita rin po natin siya kanina sa ating mga film. So we really see that she's very into this kind of initiative. Thank you so much, Mom, for the different projects that you're also joining.
The last but not the least, one of those people who had the initiative for UKAI. He is a cultural worker and a graduate student in urban sustainability at the City College of New York. He co-leads the UKAI Initiative, an arts-based research project on global consumption, discard, and waste colonialism. With experience in municipal recycling systems and community organizing, his work bridges technology, policy, art, and environmental justice. He earned his bachelor's degree in information technology from Mindanao State University in Ligon Institute of Technology. Let us give a round of applause to Sir Ezra Undag.
Wow, an alumna pala ito siya, Sir Ezra ng MSU. That is right. Kaya naman, I feel like this is the part of the program where we get to really hear firsthand from our dear speakers what they have to tell us about the initiative and, of course, about the different projects that they're diving into right now.
Exactly.
So we would like to welcome them here on stage.
On our well-decorated sofa of our MCA.
Yes, so
one by one. Let's
one by
start
one.
from Marian Aguas.
Oh, I'm really sorry.
You're going to do that way. Okay.
Okay.
Let's welcome Miss Jacqueline Reyes.
Yes, a round of applause, please, for Miss Jacqueline Reyes.
And then next, let us welcome Sir Ezra Unda. Give him a round of applause, please. Sit down, sir. One by one. Okay. But before that, let us hear some words that's inspiring us and to understand the main acts of Miss Jacqueline. So let us welcome on stage and give her the mic. Miss Jacqueline, welcome.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. First, I just want to thank the Center for Cultural Heritage Center. They've been so wonderfully accommodating to all of us, and I actually arrived here a week before the rest of the team. And then I've really been welcomed by everyone like family, especially Mayang here. Just want to shout her out. She's a woman of many talents and does the job of 20 people, and she is hiding. Thank you, Mayang. I just want to keep my presentation brief. I guess I'm going first because I co-curated this exhibition and this big project that includes the films and commissioning all these wonderful artists here with Ezra Undag, who we got to hear from also in the film. So what I thought would be a really useful offering, and also if I'm speaking too fast, please just raise your hand and I will slow down because when I'm nervous, I speak really fast. Okay, thank you. So what I decided to share today, because we are at a university and we got to learn how important this university is to Mindanao, especially in public university at that. I am also a PhD student, like the host said during the introduction, and I thought I should share some of my scholarship that I'm working on that is actually relevant to the overall project. Okay, so apologies if this is so abstract, but we're going to just try our best here. Okay, so next. Huh? Down? Okay. So first, I want to address questions that I'm asked all the time whenever I'm here in the Philippines, because I'm assuming other people will be curious. First, are you full Filipino? Because I obviously have an American accent. I was asked by Mayang if I was Korean when she first saw me, so it was kind of funny. Yes, I am full Filipino. Both of my parents come from Bicol. My mother is from Naga, Camarines Sur, and my father is from Catanduanes. Why don't you speak Filipino? Can you understand? So I wanted to share something that I think is really important to share, especially for Filipinos like me who were born in the US. And then this is not specific to me, this is very, very common, that there's a lot of reasons why people like me don't speak Tagalog, right? One of them being that, like we learned about Tita Leti in the third film, right? That there's a lot of sacrifices that families make so that they can survive. So when my parents went to the US, I grew up in California, right? And during that time in the 1990s, there were politicians, white politicians, who were basically insisting that the children of immigrants should only learn English. And otherwise you would be punished. Essentially, you could be held back like a grade or two. So they tried to kind of like make sure that we didn't get left behind. And so I guess the overcorrection of that is that a lot of people like me and my sister, my cousins, a lot of my friends don't speak Tagalog or understand it. So it's not necessarily their fault, but it's just kind of the effect of this one decision that was, well-meaning. Okay, great. And is this my first time in the Philippines? No, it's not actually. This is my fourth time in the Philippines just this year. So part of my PhD research is focusing on the Philippines, and I'm particularly interested in disaster justice. I'm interested in like what happens in the aftermath of conflict or climate disaster. And so, yeah, I love being here, even though the language is kind of a barrier. But what I find really helpful is that Filipinos are obviously very kind, and there's so many ways to communicate. And as an artist, art has been the strongest connection I have to the Philippines. So this is kind of an overview of the work that me and my group of like artists that I work with and cultural workers that I work with, this is the work that we do in New York City. It's about just promoting Filipino culture, encouraging Filipino Americans like me to understand their culture a little bit more deeply, to also think of art away from museums where we don't necessarily feel welcome. We think that our culture should be shown in public places and that we should express ourselves very proudly. And then something that I really appreciate about being here in Marawi is that the Marana are so proud of their culture. And I think it's something that we should all also practice the same way that they do, because there's a sort of self-possession about Marana people that I hope that more Filipinos, including Filipino Americans like myself, can learn to express and be like. Next. So this is the academic stuff. One day, especially if there's an issue that you care deeply, deeply about. And so for me, because I work in social welfare, I have like more than a decade's worth of experience as an activist and organizer. I also worked as an educator, and mostly in informal spaces and in developing countries. And then, it's really easy to get swept up in like the culture or like people pressuring you to think a certain way or act a certain way. And then really the consistency for me is just making sure I'm centering my own values and then making sure that like every action that I do is an extension of what I really believe, right? And then so there's just this framework that I learned actually from activist spaces. Like actually going out and protesting or organizing an intimate gathering like the community meal, you start to kind of just map first, like why are we doing what we're doing? So we're not just thoughtlessly organizing each other, right? So I've heard it referred to as the IPO originally, right? So we got to develop the IPO and then we have to write it all down before we do anything. And we have to make sure we just like, we're checking in with ourselves, right? And then this is a really complicated question. You don't necessarily find the right answers, but it forces you to really just pause and think about it, right? And then as I've like grown in my own practice, I've also added artistic because I've learned that cultural work and artwork, especially despite language differences, it's really important that the art also reflects all of these things, right? So these are the abstract mapping of it. Can you go to the next slide? I've also learned as a cultural worker is that there's a lot of hurdles to actually doing the work that we want to do. Even if we want to say like that we're promoting social justice or we want to decolonize or we're very anti-imperial in our work, there's a lot of like interpersonal issues that get in the way, right? So these are the things that I've observed over the years that I try to share with everybody. I'm not the definitive expert on these dynamics, but I think it's a starting point, right? So I'll just go through these really quickly, right? I think we all know here, especially Mindanao, that what colonial mentality is, right? And so I'm a person that doesn't like to just admire the problem and name it. I'm always thinking, what can be the solution? Even if it's a difficult one, at least we're like working towards moving past the problem, right? So yeah, we complain about colonial mentality all the time, but like, what does it mean to decolonize? And there's no like a simple answer to that. It's always every little situation. Sometimes it's a big situation, right? But it's something we have to reflect on. Scarcity mindset. Do we know what scarcity mindset is? Yeah, a little bit. And some people in the back. So scarcity mindset is like the belief that there's not enough to go around. And so you start to get competitive. Your elbows get very sharp. And sometimes you get really mean when you're trying to get something that you think is scarce, right? But I truly believe maybe because I'm an artist, we're always creating things, you know? Like you can always create more, you know? And then it's a really good mindset to have because then maybe we don't have to like think of our people or like our friends or our community as competition, right? Next is crab mentality. I think we all know this one too. I think it goes along with the scarcity mindset. We want to just continue to acknowledge that as a real problem because we want to highlight Filipino excellence, right? And I think we should do more of that because as I was telling the rest of the team, like Filipinos are so talented. Imagine if we just open the doors for everyone who has all that talent to share, right? So moving away from crab mentality and actually sharing each other's work and uplifting each other. That's radical. Okay, the next one is respectability, politics, and gatekeeping. This is a tough one too, right? Because of the legacies of the colonial governments, and there's a lot of different ideas of like what is proper, you know, and what's like more respectable. And then, you know, these are very important to observe, right? But doesn't mean we have to always adhere to the rules that might not always make sense, right? So instead, you know, we say, let's just be transparent about what's happening so we can understand and make proper decisions for ourselves. And then let's reframe how we think about these power dynamics. Maybe we're thinking so small that this is the only way we have to make decisions. And maybe if we take a step back, then we're like, okay, we see the bigger picture. Maybe this thing that we thought was so big, or like from this perspective, is actually like, okay, it's a small thing, you know, and then we can move past it. So perspective matters, right? Victimhood politics. This is a really tough one because, you know, we all know centuries of trauma in our history, right? And then we have to be very aware when we start to weaponize that victimhood. Like, it's easy to say, oh, like, all these things happen to me, right? And then we should be, like, understanding and respecting that, you know, experience from each other. But sometimes we take it too far, right? And so we need to, I guess, understand and acknowledge when the trauma is happening, but also work towards healing. And that's really the harder part, is to heal it, right? Citizenship privilege. This is something I know Filipinos in the Philippines really understand because a lot of times people are trying to leave the Philippines, right? But I think Filipino Americans or anywhere in the diaspora, we forget that we're so American, even though we're always reminded how Filipino we are because we're the minority. But we're just remembering like what it means to have a passport where we could go anywhere, we could just leave, right? And so like just being more conscious of our of Filipinos abroad and how we can properly work together and properly do all the other things to like really like support our community. The solution I think is to like think and operate transnationally. So transnational means like, you don't only think in terms of one nationality or like one country, but you think of how all the countries and all their policies work together. Yeah, so that's hard. So our project actually tries to be transnational. As you notice, there's so many different locales, and that way we're trying to give the bigger picture, right? Last one is self-interest and moving towards community interest. This is more for the Americans when I share this slide, because we're taught to be very individualistic, and the wonderful thing about Filipinos is that we're very community-oriented. And so I try to remind Filipinos in the US, like, let's not forget that there's other ways to be in community. So, next slide. And so just to close my presentation, this is the IPOA for this exhibition. You can take a picture, I can share the slides if you like, but this is just to show that maybe, like, for whatever issue you care about, maybe you just try this exercise and think about what's actually gonna, like, advance the community, and actually you can move towards, like, helping, like, the people that who are, like, you care most about, or, like, addressing the issues that you care most about. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again, Ms. Jacqueline. Now, of course, to share with us more of his knowledge, may we have Sir Ezra here on stage.
Thank you. Hello. Let me pull up my notes. Well, thank you for coming, everybody. Assalamu alaikum, and Mabiya Kapepita, everyone. Really, again, thank you for all of you for joining our artist talk today. We're truly grateful to have with us here. Again, my name is Ezra Undag. I am the co-curator of this art exhibition here in Marawi, here at Maranao Cultural Heritage Center. We call Warn Worlds. That's the name of the exhibit that you are here right now. As you may know, I am an alumnus of the Mindanao State University, IIT, 1 MSU. Secondly, I would like to thank Professor Latif Yusuf at the SOAR for welcoming us here in MSU Marawi. This exhibit would not have been possible without her generosity. Her team at MSU OIPP and at the Maranao here at Cultural Heritage Center, who went just above and beyond to ensure the success of this artistic and cultural exchange. And for that, we are truly grateful, so thank you so much. Next slide, okay. So that's the agenda of my brief presentation today. I'm gonna walk through Ukay Initiative, Waste Colonialism that was mentioned in the film, participatory action research as research method, second-hand clothing characterization, and why Ukay? Why do we care about clothes? Why do we care about fabric garments? Next slide, please. But let me share a photo of my batch in 2008. That's me in the upper left, with my face enclosed in a circle. But during this brief presentation, again, earlier I will be discussing the research element of this exhibit. But before I do so, please allow me to share my background that truly shaped my passion and on community-based arts, community organizing, and environmental advocacy, particularly related to waste, trash, basura. Next slide, please. So when I moved to the US in 2015, I found my way to working at the New York City's Department of Sanitation. As you see, the photo to the left, those are my former colleagues at my city agency. It's a city agency that manages, collects, transports, recycles, disposes New York City's trash. And the city agency is actually the world's largest waste management government institution. It's serving 8.5 million New Yorkers. And so working as a civil servant, as a government employee for the city of New York, that was really formative in my professional and academic interest towards waste. That work shaped my views to serving the public service. And the photos to the top right, I think, half of my body is cropped, that's okay. Those are my fellow volunteers at the nonprofit bottle recycling or redemption center in New York City. And so with these experiences, truly both my professional and academic work led me back to the Philippines. As you see in the photo at the bottom right, those guys are the Muntinlupa informal waste workers who I've started working with since last year. And now I come back to my dear home, Mindanao, my beloved Mindanao, and I'm feeling really honored to talk to you, all of you, about Ukay Initiative. Next. So Ukay Initiative stands for Unearthing Knowledge, Arts, and Interdependence. Like Ms. Reyes said earlier, we try to operate transnationally. And so it's a transnational environmental justice project that explores waste colonialism and climate change and pathways to address them through art, culture, and community building. What is waste colonialism? Okay, so to the top right is crop, but that says waste colonialism. All right. Do you want to take your time fixing it? Oh, we're good. Okay. So it was mentioned earlier in the film what waste colonialism is, but for those who missed it, it refers to the practice when developed countries, not just countries, but cities, municipalities, when they send their waste to develop less developed countries, poorer cities, poorer municipalities, poorer barangays, and eventually polluting those communities. So in this exhibit, you will be exposed to the term waste colonialism, will be re-exposed to that term. And again, it does not happen between countries only, it happens between barangays, it happens between municipios. As an example, can you move to the next slide? That's the dashboard. I have computer science background. So that's the dashboard that I have been working with my fellow advocates in New York City to influence New York City's solid waste management plan. You probably heard of this. Solid waste management plan is when a government, a municipal government, would plan for the next 20 years on how to manage their resources to collect, to manage waste. For example, how much money to allocate for purchasing a new dump truck, how money should be budgeted to be hiring new sanitation workers, volunteers, to fund nonprofit partners. 20 years, that's solid waste management plan. So I created this dashboard to visualize how New York City exports their waste to faraway places. So you see that map here to the left, New York City, it exports their waste to cities outside of New York City, to states outside of New York City, traveling over 600 miles via truck, kinakarga via truck, or by railway. And what happens is that those garbage, those waste, ends up in really low-income communities, poor communities. And most of them are actually brown people, non-white people. Hindi mga puti, usually mga brown and black, mga migrante. But as you can realize, this waste is managed, exported out of New York City, but at the expense of the public health of these people, of their social welfare. Next slide, please. Well, there's a parallel of this. There's a waste export to Southeast Asia. Mga kapitbahay natin, Vietnam, Indonesia, what else? I'm blanking out. Singapore, well, Singapore is very wealthy. But to the less developed Southeast Asian neighbors. And we, the Philippines, we receive waste. Why do developed countries export waste? And one of the many reasons is economics. It's cheaper for them to export waste and offload the burden of managing waste to others than managing waste locally within their jurisdiction, so they can save money. And this waste could be, I think I mentioned in the film, could be electronics, plastics, textiles, so many of them, and that, in our case, for this project, clothes, used clothes, cheap, low-quality clothes, which end up in ukay-ukay across the country. But please don't get me wrong, I love second-hand clothes, I love ukay-ukay. I have really fond memories with my mother going to Ukay Ukay. But if you're really trying to find good garments, nakaswerte ka for a piece of clothing, but through mounds, piles, bundok, na clothes that are not even appropriate for the Philippines, not appropriate for our climate, not appropriate for our culture. And we have so many cultures within our country. And if that requires sifting through a large volume of that, very heavily soiled and damaged items, then that is a big problem. And it should not be the responsibility of our beloved Ukay Ukay owners, customers like us who love Ukay Ukay. It's not a responsibility to be managing waste. And you might say, this is too big of a problem, this is impossible to address, it's impossible to abolish. Yes, it's a very big problem. We can't fully abolish waste colonialism, but there's always something we can do. And this is what Ukay Initiative is for, and that's what we're trying to exhibit, and we're trying to show, what we're trying to propose. And one of them, as you will learn and as you explore the exhibit, one of them is through arts-based research. And one of the research methods that we employed is participatory action research. This might probably be a hybrid of academic and community organizing. This is what we use for this project, or we call it PAR for short. It's when our volunteers and our collaborators become our co-researchers. And you will see in this exhibit that PAR, Participatory Action Research, PAR, manifest in multiple forms. And one of them are the photos of clothing tags in your t-shirt and your garments taken by our volunteers and collaborators using their phone cameras or just your basic point-and-shoot digital cameras. And you might wonder, why are we doing this? Why do we care? And well, the overarching goal is for state and corporate accountability. And to support policies like, I think I mentioned in the film, extended producer responsibility policy. The name implies to extend the responsibility to the producers, to the brands, to the manufacturers, to manage, to pay for the management of the end of life of their products. When their products become basura, when products became, they have to pay for it and not as individual citizens. We have a zine, a broadsheet, so I think we listed some policies, so I'll give you a copy later, and there's one many of them upstairs. So who specifically might be responsible for the end of life of this discarded clothes? I mentioned it earlier, and that is one research question we aim to answer. And as you see here on the side, we did some analysis on the clothing tags we collected, over 500 of them. And after our analysis, because there's so many of them, we had to use artificial intelligence to streamline the process. And then we found that Uniqlo, Gap, Old Navy, H&M, you might think, oh my God, so shy itong mga brands na to. But no, they're considered fast fashion. You know what fast fashion is? Fast fashion is the hyper-production, hyper-consumption of low-quality, cheap clothes. You just throw it away after one single use. Right, next slide, please. We did another level of analysis, and we found out that a lot of those clothes were manufactured understandably, in these countries, China, Vietnam, Indonesia, our Southeast Asian neighbor, Cambodia, Bangladesh. And we will think, why these countries? We mentioned a economic reason. It's cheaper for these very wealthy multinational corporations to outsource the manufacture to countries with weak environmental regulations, with weak labor laws, and exploit our dear neighbors. Next slide, please. Lastly, then we found out that, remember I mentioned cheap labor, low quality materials? Those materials are extracted through these means. So if you ever I think we have undergrads here who are trying to pursue masters. If you want to start your research on maybe let me dive deep and research where would this materials be extracted from. Like for example, cotton. Okay, what does cotton do? What does growing cotton do? Well, as a matter of fact, cotton is a very hyper water intensive crop. So if a multinational corporation partner with a supplier and then they would grow a cotton in the desert, does that even make sense? Walang tubig. Polyester. You heard the term before. Polyester is synthetic fiber. It's made out of plastic, fossil fuel. So the more clothes are manufactured, made out of polyester, the more plastic we generate, the more we pollute the environment, if that is not managed properly. And like I said in the beginning, if they're not managed properly within the wealthy nation, if it costs too much for them to manage that, what are they going to do? They're going to ship it out. They're going to export it. Where do they end up? Here. And that, next slide, please. So you will see in the exhibit above on the second floor, these are the clothing tags we captured. And so you'll see how enormous, and it can be overwhelming to see, to understand this issue. Next slide, please. Again, why do we care ukay? Why damit? Why clothes? Why garment? Why fabric? Well, clothes, garments, fabric are personal. We carry them on our bodies most of the time, close to our skin. We tend to use them as a means for self-expression, to form our identities. They carry personal memories. In the hand-me-downs from your older siblings, or from your cousins, or like dalandap or inaul, who's passed down between generations within your clan. That really carries memories and stories. And also it's a way, if you have attended our workshops here, they're a way to tell stories, like I said, through fashion and photography. Like as we saw in Marian's work in this exhibit and during their workshop on Tuesday, if you were here, or like the Panubuk embroidery by Renel from Panay Bukidnon, copies, drawing patterns and inspiration from the environment, or sewing and stitching, or acts of peaceful protest against the big guy, as what Abby Manwiller mentioned earlier, yesterday, felt like earlier. And as they actually co-led embroidery workshop yesterday. So I think I saw familiar faces who were there yesterday. So in this exhibit, Worn Worlds, you'll notice that clothes and fabrics become more than just materials on display. It's a way for us to imagine how we can mend relationships, showing small gestures of care, of reclamation, of stitching connections, and to mend things that's been split, that's been fractured, regardless if that's in our material world or our social relationships. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sir Ezra, for that very enlightening and very educational topics. Now let us welcome on stage another guest, Miss Abby Manwiller. Please give her a round of applause.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Oh, sorry. Thank you so much for being here. And also, I am very honored to be here. And I think I've just felt so much love and joy and welcomeness and openness from all of you. And I acknowledge the privilege that I'm here and that you are also curious to learn from me. And I feel very honored to do that. I also wanted to take a second to talk about my shirt, which is really beautiful and cool. And Renel's aunt made it. And so I'm very, I'm very excited and honored to be able to wear this today and show off the beautiful work and the beautiful culture preservation that it represents. So thank you, Renel, for the shirt. And it also serves as sort of an introduction to this. This wasn't originally part of what I wanted to talk about today, but it was an experience that I had since I got here. The first night that I was here, Renelle and I sat upstairs and talked about stitching and embroidery together. It's a passion that we both share. And this sort of phrase of speaking in stitches came into my head because neither of us really speak the same language all the time. We were raised in very different cultures, but as we were showing each other these stitches that we know, it didn't matter. It didn't matter where we were raised, it didn't matter what language we spoke, we understand what each other is doing with stitches. So I think it was just a really beautiful moment since I've been here that I wanted to share with all of you as an artist. And I'm trying to collect these moments while I'm here, and I'm very honored to share them. Okay, on to what I'm actually talking about today. When I was prompted to do this artist talk, Ezra and Jacqueline, who very kindly invited me to be a part of this exhibit, said you can talk about anything, you can talk about your life as an artist, you can talk about your work. And I didn't really want to come up here and just give you like a list of my accomplishments and my projects. It sounded kind of boring, not really interesting. So I wanted to focus a little bit on what my mission statement is as an artist, and then talk about how my work serves that. But before I do that, I do have to give you a list of my accomplishments and art pieces so that you know who I am and what I do. So very briefly, I started my career as a costume maker on Broadway. So I was sewing, stitching, crafting, all sorts of costumes for different shows like The Lion King, Wicked, all those shows. That served me very well. I really enjoyed doing that for a really long time. But I sort of saw the need to move on from that. I brought my sewing skills into the fashion industry. I worked for really small American brands that are maybe not recognizable outside the US, and I helped them serve them in ways of offering alterations and repairs to their customers for their clothing pieces. Seeing the fashion world and how much of a mess it is really made me want to get involved in sustainability, as Ezra was talking about, this sort of waste colonialism, not only that, but the exploitation of the workers who make the clothing, and just all around mess the fashion industry is. It doesn't care about its consumers, it doesn't care about its creators, and it doesn't really care about what it's doing to the planet. So that sort of skyrocketed me into this interest in sustainability, where I joined the City College Sustainable Environment Program with Ezra, where we were research partners for our thesis project. Now I work for a company that is, it does waste management for textile companies. So we take any waste that fashion companies have, any extra clothes that they can't sell, we refurbish, we clean, repair, and then resell them as secondhand goods. So it's sort of a big version of an ukai-ukai. Okay, so anyway, enough about all of that. So next slide, please. So with all that in mind, my mission as an artist has always been to make things last, keep things in use. That way we're not contributing to the waste problem. So next slide, please. So my work on Broadway, clothes on Broadway has to be worn 8 shows a week, 7 days a week, multiple times by multiple people. So to make clothes do that, we have to employ techniques to make them last. So one of the biggest ones we do, we add extra seam allowance, which just means when you're cutting out the patterns, you leave some extra space on the edges, so that if you want someone else to wear it who's a different size, you can move the seams in. You can reuse, you can keep things in use longer, and we make things alterable for people. Also, I'm sorry if I'm speaking too fast. Just like Jacqueline said, please stop me. I get nervous and talk fast. Oh, sorry. Go back. Thank you, Mayan. We also use a lot of really strong thread. So there is different plies of thread. There's like a 1-ply, a 2-ply, all these different things, just sort of like sandpaper. And when you use stronger threads, stuff don't rip as often. It stays in use longer. You can use it again. You can wash it again. You can keep it going. And then also we make sure to finish all of our edges with sergers and overlock machines. There's no raw edges in anything, so nothing is fraying, falling apart. Everything stays clean and usable over and over and over again. So those are just a few of the artist techniques that I've learned from working in Broadway costumes to keep things in use longer, to keep things alive and not trash. Okay, next Thank you. And then sort of my work in fashion, I did a lot of alterations, a lot of mending, a lot of repairs, a lot of restoration of vintage pieces. A couple of the companies I worked for were vintage companies. So there's a few methods. I actually learned a Japanese method called sashiko to do some mending that is visible and very beautiful. Zipper repairs on old garments. Zippers are often something that falls out or rusts or breaks, or you lose the pull and they can't use it anymore. So learning how to replace zippers was very helpful. And then that picture is kind of hard to see. Sometimes fabric that's really old and vintage just straight up falls apart, and you can't sew it back together because there's a big hole in it. So you use something called interfacing to repair the holes, and so it gives you a little bit of extra seam to work with to sew it back together. Where'd it go? There we go. And so then finally, my current work today is sort of all of that on a larger scale. So I work for a company called Tersus Solutions, and we basically do all of that. Some of our clients are the North Face, New Balance, Lululemon, these like huge fashion companies, and that have a lot of waste. We like to say it's just, we'll take the junk that's sitting around in your warehouse. A lot of times what happens is stuff kind of gets mismade in manufacturing, and so normally these companies would just throw all that away or burn it. We sort of adopt all of that in, refurbish it, clean it, make it ready to be resold. So these are just a few of the pictures to illustrate how huge the operation is, and I'm very happy that I get to do that. So to sort of wrap this all up about my experiences as an artist, from all of this, you can tell that I'm very technical. I don't consider myself a designer. I never have. I probably never will. My work as an artist is very technical. I am very, building things for other people type artist, which is an option. Not all artists have to be super creative. Not all artists have to be, visionaries, and you can still do art by making other people's visions come true. And I think that's where I am in terms of slightly being a scientist, where I'm slightly an engineer, and art is not just design. It's also the skill. It's also the creation. It's also the making of something that's an idea into something real. So that's sort of me as an artist. And I think that's pretty much all I have for you. So thank you so much, and thank you for your attention. Thank you for your curiosity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Abby, for that very enlightening and technical discussion on what you do. So right now, we will be graced, of course, by our speaker, Mr. Renel Lavella. Thank you so much. And of course, he will be, since he will be speaking to us in the vernacular of Filipino, I believe, Sir Ezra will be here to translate it, of course, for New York friends. Thank you so much.
So, magandang umaga sa inyong lahat, at ako'y nagagalak na may bahagi rin ang aking kwento na talagang binitbit ko pa hanggang dito sa Marawi, at natutuwa ako na nakarating ako dito sa napakagandang bayan na ito.
Good morning, everyone. I am very grateful that you're welcoming here to be able to share my stories, and it's very special that I am here in Marawi. It's truly a special day.
So, paumanhinat ako'y magsasalita sa wikang Filipino sapagkat ito ang napaka-komportable na wika para sa akin, para na maihayag ko ang aking mga iniisip at nararamdaman. At ang aking ibabahagi sa inyo ay ang pamana ng mga ninuno, sapagkat ang kulturang ito ay isang pamana sa amin ng aming mga ninuno, mga kwento sa likod ng sinulid at karayom.
I'm going to be speaking in front of you guys in Tagalog, which I feel comfortable, and I'd be able to share freely and truly, especially that I will be talking with the heritage of my ancestors, and I'll be talking about the stories of behind the needle and the thread.
So ang kwento ko kung saan nagumpisa ang aking landas sa pag-embroider, ako ay naging isang pioneer student ng School of Living Tradition sa Barangay Datagan, Kalinog, Iloilo. So naging isang pioneer student ako doon at nag-enroll ako doon sa School of Living Tradition as student sa embroidery at nagkaroon ako ng 3 na cultural master. Yun ay sila Rowena Rafil, Rosel Casipi at Regina Villanueva.
Sorry, I missed the earlier part. I got distracted. But I had 3 cultural masters, Rowena, Rosel, and Regina.
At simula nung nalaman ko yung lahat ng mga disenyo, hindi ko talaga tinigilan na naging mas uhaw ako sa kaalaman tungkol sa aking sarili, tungkol sa aming pamayanan bilang Panay Bukidnon. Kaya lumipat ako ng ibang community ng Panay Bukidnon para matutunan ano pa ba yung iba nilang mga disenyo na nakatago dun sa kanilang community at inaral ng mga disenyo. Kaya ang aking kasuotan minsan ay halo. Disenyo ng Halawudnon, Panay Bukidnon galing sa probinsya ng Iloilo at yung Panay Bukidnon na galing
Since I started learning this design, I couldn't help myself from quenching my thirst to learn more, to express, for me to learn to how to do to pursue self-exploration journey. And I went to visit other communities in Panay Bukidnon to learn from them. And as you see, I may have mentioned this, that there are many designs, many patterns, and I learned from their designs.
Ngunit sa paglago ng aming kultura ng pagbuborda, napakalaki ang naitulong nito lalo na sa kabuhayan ng aming mga kababaihan sapagkat kami iniimbita na magkaroon ng mga craft and arts fair at marami ang nag-imbenta kami sa mga fair, sa mga paaralan, sa mga malls at ang pinakamalaki ay every year yung National Arts and Craft Fair na nangyayari sa Manila. Napakalaking tulong ng panubok
We started learning more about embroidery and since the Panubok embroidery flourished even more, it became an economic livelihood for my community, and especially an allowance, for me to be able to go to school and support myself financially through Panubok embroidery.
Ngunit dumating ang panahon na lumago ang teknolohiya at nagkaroon kami ng masamang kompetensya at ito ay ang pag-imprenta sa tela ng mga tradisyonal namin ng mga disenyo kung saan ito ay naging malaking hamon sa amin ng mga mangboborda. Marami rin ang nagtangka na gamitin ang makina para gayahin ang iba sa mga tradisyonal na pattern ng Panay Bukidnon. At minsan marami ang nalilito saan ba ang authentic at saan ang hindi.
When time came, the technology came, it really became a bad influence that to a point that machines were used to print on fabric. It was a challenge for us embroiderers who embroider with our hands, not machines. And people get confused which one is truly Panubok, which one is machine printed.
Kaya isa sa mga aming hinaing ay nakakaroon kami ng mga pagpupulong-pulong sa aming community at nagpapadala kami ng mga sulat doon sa mga nakikita namin, especially sa social media, na mga post na merong mga tao, designers na nag-claim. Kasi maraming mga designers na gagamitin ang traditional patterns, i-arrange nila and i-claim nila na that's my design. na kung ating iisipin ng malalim, that is a communal property ng Panay Bukidnon. Nag-arrange ka lang ng design, but the design itself ay hindi ninyo pagmamay-ari, kundi pagmamay-ari ng lahat ng Panay Bukidnon. At isa yun sa mga nagiging problema din ng aming pamayanan.
Because of that, we in my community gathered together, we had community meetings, and we learned of this malpractice. We would send letters to folks, those who we found on social media. And we learned that many designers would just find a pattern online and then would just rearrange the patterns and then claim those as their own. And that's a very big problem because those designs, those patterns are coming. It's our
para na maraming tao ang tumangkilik sa panubok at isa sa mga nakita namin at ginawa na namin noon pa ay ang pagburda sa mga ukay. Kasi maraming mga ukay-ukay na ang gaganda at marami ngayon sa mga modernong kabataan na ayaw nang magsuot ng tradisyonal na tabas. Gusto nila yung sexy para sa kanila at bumibili kami sa ukay nila, lagyan namin ng burda at marami ang natutuwa kasi masusuot nila kahit na hindi sa formal na mga okasyon. Kasi kung traditional lang, nasusuot lang nila pag formal na okasyon. Gusto nila yung magagamit nila pang araw-araw. Kaya doon nag-umpisa na sumabay din kami sa agos ng modernisasyon. Maghanap kami ng mga ukay, lagyan ng borda at ibenta. At naging maganda ang outcome at marami ang tumangkilik sa mga ukay na mga produkto ng Panay Bukidnon na merong panubok.
That's why with those folks who appropriate our designs, and that's why we try to find ways. That's why we started exploring embroidering on ukay-ukay, and as you may know, can relate. A lot of folks in our younger generation, especially from our indigenous community, they don't want to wear traditional garments. They'd rather wear something modern, and for us to adapt to that, we embroider on ukay-ukay, and we ride with modernity. We try to modernize with the times.
Kaya nga marami ang nagtatanong parati sa akin, para ba sa iyo, Renel, hindi ba't delikado yung ginagawa mo kasi pinapatay mo ang tradisyonal na tabas at pinapalitan ninyo ng mga ukay? Hindi ba parang medyo masagwa siya tingnan? Kasi gumagawa kayo ng mga hindi tradisyonal na dapat ang ginagawa ninyo lang ay yung tradisyonal ninyo. At hindi ba kayo natatakot na yung mga tradisyonal ninyo na mga damit ay susuotin ng ibang tao at gagamitin kung saan-saan na walang paalam sa inyo? So, parati ang tanong sa akin. At ang aking sagot, napakasimple lang parati ang sagot ko.
Sorry. Suspense. Many people would ask, why would you embroider patterns on ukay-ukay? Wouldn't that be a problem? And aren't you worried that ukay-ukay will eventually replace your traditional garments? Would you consider that as ugly?
Ang paraan kasi wala tayong batas na nagsasabi na kapag binenta mo ang isang damit, yun ay pagmamay-ari mo pa. So ibig sabihin pag binenta natin ang isang pagmamay-ari natin, nawawala na yung ownership sa atin. At yung ownership ay natatransfer dun sa bumibili. Kaya wala tayong pakialam sa kung ano man yung alam. If ginamit nila yun sa hindi tama, hindi na natin yun kasalanan. Kasi sinubukan naman natin lahat ng paraan na i-educate sila kung paano ba talaga ang tamang pagsuot at hindi natin kailangan ng batas. Ang kailangan lang common sense kung paano gamitin ang bagay-bagay. Kagaya ng paggamit sa sa comfort room, no? Hindi natin kailangan ng batas na yan ay pang babae o pang lalaki. We just need common sense how to proper use sa mga bagay-bagay.
And so the answer that I tell them is that I am not scared if they wear clothes without patterns on ukay-ukay. Actually, there are no laws that forbid you from wearing clothes. If you buy a clothes, then the ownership gets automatically transferred to you. But the only problem is that if you start wearing these clothes with these indigenous patterns, the problem is that when you misuse them, when you misrepresent them, and actually, everyone has to know that there should be just common sense, to wear these clothes. For example, you use a bathroom. It's very clear that there's common sense, how to use it, where to go.
Kaya marami ang problema pang alam namin na parating, ngunit sinusubukan namin ang aming buong lakas bilang isang community na magkaisa, ipagpatuloy kung ano ang tradisyonal at gamitin ng buong community ang tradisyonal at makipagsabayan din sa galaw ng mundo para hindi rin kami maiwan ng sibilisasyon. Kasi alam namin na kailangan naming sumabay sa ikot ng mundo. Kailangan din naming magbenta para sa ekonomikal na pangangailangan namin. At ito ay isa din sa mga tulay na maipromote namin ang aming mga tradisyonal na kasuotan. At siguro yun lamang ang maibabahagi ko ngayon. Dagdagan na lang natin mamaya sa mga tanong at maraming salamat sa inyong lahat.
This is why me and my community of Panay Bukidnon people, we really muster our strength, our community power to continue cultivating, promoting our traditions, and not only that, at the same time, we try to go with the modern times. We try to adapt. We try to modernize, so we don't so that we don't get left behind. We innovate. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for both of our speakers. Grabe, na-challenge ang mga bilinguals dito. But anyway, thank you so much, Sir Nel and Sir Ezra. Now, for last but not the least of our speaker, let us all welcome on stage Marian Aguas. Please give him a round of applause.
Hello, good morning. My name is Marian Aguas. I did the fashion photography workshop on Tuesday. I am a photographer and artist in New York. So I am Phil-Am first generation. My family is actually from Florida Blanca, Pampanga. I visited them last week. Nagmano, you have to mano. Yeah, I have a my Lola and from my dad. I am a fourth generation photographer. So my Lola's dad had a photography business in Florida Blanca. My Lola took it over, and then all of my and so I grew up with a lot of cameras in the house. So now, of my generation, I think we're like 36 cousins in my generation. I'm the one who is actually continuing the photography practice, which my tito reminded me, which I'm actually very honored that I'm one of the ones continuing it in our family. Yeah. So Oh, so this is so I'm here, I'm mostly gonna be talking about my artist work, which is actually separate from my commercial work. So commercial work, of course, is how I make money, that is jobs, right? And then artist work naman is iba, that's really, sometimes it makes you money if you're lucky. And then, but it cannot always sustain you. So there's separate kind of mindset of what I do. The art that's hanging in the gallery right now, that is my art. And these are just some samples of some commercial work. It's not really what I'm going to talk about, but just so you can see, I take portraits, I've taken product photography, I take a lot of events, I take food and wine product, I'm kind of all over the place. Similar as you watch your parents be hard workers to send you to school, you need to earn money, so you have to be outside trying to earn money. So this is my commercial work that I've done. But really what I wanted to talk about is more of my artist practice. So actually, next slide maybe? Next slide now. So I do a lot of community work. I work a lot in the community. It's really important for me to actually represent us, I guess, as Asians in America, but also especially Filipinos in America, because we don't have a lot of representation. And because we're Asian in the West, we oftentimes get exoticized. The ways that we are photographed by white people or Western people, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't represent us, where it's a very different kind of representation. The history, I am very aware of the history of photography is actually very extractive, and it holds a lot of power. The history of photography, you are able to create stories, right? And so whoever's holding the camera holds a lot of power of what story they want to tell. So including even our own history, our Filipino history, during the Spanish-American War, actually the Battle of Manila Bay was staged because the American newspaper industry lobbied to have that war because they wanted to make money. The newspapers in the US during that time were on the rise. So they lobbied for America to push for that war. So they staged that battle just so that they can sell newspapers. And that really is the power and the history of the camera from the West. It has a lot of actually violent history. And so I am very aware of the power that holds, and that's why I actually am, in my own personal work, am very aware and trying to actually showcase it in a way where we're telling the stories of our people from us and by us, and instead of other people telling our stories for us, because you don't know what they're going to say and you don't know how they're going to use our stories, right? So I'm involved with a lot of different Filipino activists, those cultural workers, those doing the work, those helping the migrants. The migrants in the United States are also very underrepresented. Some of them, kahit anumang, maybe the messaging here is it's so positive, the lives in the US, but actually sometimes tago ng tago sila, hindi sila legal, so they don't get paid very much. They send all their money here. It's very hard actually yung mga lives ng US. So us who are Phil-Ams who are privileged, or even the migrants who are sometimes more privileged, we do a lot of work to make sure that we are helping all our kababayan. And so that is something that I'm involved with in New York. So on the right, that's from the Philippine Independence Day Parade in New York, the largest Philippine Independence Day celebration actually outside of the Philippines is in New York. So masaya yun actually if you want to come on June, it's usually the first weekend of June. It's really, really fun. Beanie performed at this last one, so I got lucky enough to see Beanie for free. But yeah, and on the left is some of the work I do in Chinatown. A lot of Chinatowns in the United States, especially in New York, they're under threat of gentrification. So, which means, I don't know if gentrification is a problem here, maybe more displacement actually is relatable. So what happens is, this is happening in Chinatowns all over the US. They're getting kicked out of their own property, of their own land. People come and then they change the different businesses, and so I'm also involved with organizations making sure that the people who have lived in Chinatown for generations na, mga 5 generations na sila na in the US, that they are still able to keep their businesses and that they're able to maintain their culture there. So those are my those are really my passion projects and how I really got to know my community in New York. Because I've lived there now for 13 years. I'm originally from Los Angeles. But yeah, and so from that work, I think that's how I actually met Jacqueline and Ezra. They invited me to be a part of this project. They told me, hey, Marian, we have these clothes. They're ukay-ukay clothes. They got embroidered by Renel from the Panay Bukidnon people. Do you want to do a photo shoot with them? And I was like, yes, perfect. That's exactly a perfect combination of everything I love. Filipino culture, fashion, arts, actual local crafts, etc. And then the organization that Jacqueline and Ezra are both a part of is called Little Manila Queens, where there is a very large population of Filipino immigrants in New York. They were actually, some of the scenes in the documentary are from there. And so the photo shoot and the photos outside is really a combination of all those three. So they showcase the clothing, they showcase some of my very talented friends, they showcase Little Manila Queens, which I love. It's like my favorite place. Yeah, I wanted to, and they also showcase the mythologies of the Panay Bukidnon people, So I wanted to just share, maybe talk through some of the photos so that you see maybe what goes into kind of creating something like this. Again, coming from a place of respect, I did not want to appropriate. I didn't want to, disrespect the clothing. I know that, like Renel said, this is from a very long history of the way that indigenous people are telling their stories. So I actually wanted to recreate some of the mythologies and the stories of the Panay Bukidnon people, but what would it look like recreated kind of from the diaspora from my perspective as a Filipino in the diaspora. So, for example, this photo is of the Sugidanon. So, the Sugidanon, and I double-checked this all with Renel, so I'm like, I don't want to say the wrong things. But anyway, okay, so the Sugidanon is the chanter of the myths. We saw that in the first documentary. They're the ones who learn the myths. Traditionally, they will chant the myths in a hammock and while everyone listens. So that's not our context in New York, right? So I thought to myself, so where will we hear the mythologies? Where do we hear the stories? So I actually chose to shoot the Sugidanon. So the person in the middle is the Sugidanon. They're listening to her, and I asked the hair salon called Guapa in New York if we can shoot it there, because where are you gonna hear the chica of the town? You're gonna hear it in the hair salon. So that's why I thought if you're gonna hear the myths, the stories, you're gonna hear it in the hair salon. So my version in New York, where you hear the chica, and they were in the background getting their hair done, they're watching us. We have some BTS photos, I think, of them. One of them, I think, is even getting her hair bleached. The owner of the salon is in the back of this photo. But anyway, so I did it there. So that was kind of the intentions. This is the intentions of how I wanted to do the shoot, to kind of tell the story and respect all of the stories. So this is a local hair salon called Guapa. If you're in New York, go there. They're so fun. And that's why in the background across the street, you can see the restaurant Capamilia. So it's not just showcasing the people, it's also showcasing the Filipino town in New York. Next slide. This one is, this is another myth, and so this one is I called it the witches and the cut bamboo. So this photo depicts the myth of Paiburong accidentally cutting down the bamboo of the witches Makabagting and Amburakay. And so you can see here, so obviously they're fighting, and this is in a restaurant called Amazing Grace. That's my favorite place to go get silog breakfast, and we always go to Amazing Grace actually. So this is where we had it. If you go to the next slide, actually, I included also kind of like the kind of planning that we go through. So I wanted to make it almost like the Last Supper, because I thought, the composition that I wanted, and in Phil-Am, I don't know if the same here, but in Phil-Am culture, if you walk into a Filipino household, you will see that painting of the Last Supper, I can guarantee it. I don't know. You will not escape that. So I wanted the photo to almost, pareho rin dito. Is it the same? Maybe, maybe not. Okay. No? Huh? Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Right, exactly. Yes, but so in my experience, you walk into a room, there will be Last Supper in the dining room. So I wanted I was really inspired. So if you go previous slide, actually. So it's kind of the same like structure. That's how I wanted it to be depicted. It's like this, a lot of different people in the photo kind of interacting with each other. So next slide, sorry, next slide. So yeah, and so that's kind of what goes into planning. My whole team sees this and then we all plan together. I love fashion photography. It's very collaborative. It's not just me. I get to work with a lot of people. I'm extroverted, so I love, the gulo. I love talking to people. Next slide. And so, I drew it out. These are like little notes. There's a drawing. You say, okay, we're gonna do this. And so everyone on set kind of knows what we're all gonna do, and then we do it. And so that was kind of how we did the day. And so if you wanna plan your own shoot, this is I wanted to share a little bit, what you can do to kind of plan it a little bit. Next slide. And then these are also some of the slides of the stylists that I work with. I don't know if Mari is listening. If Mari, you're listening, thank you for doing this work. I had a very talented stylist, my friend who's also Filipino, styled this shoot. And honestly, if you're gonna do a fashion shoot, stylist is maybe 50% of the work is the stylist and 50% of the work is the photographer, because they're the ones really making the clothes come to life instead of them just being on a hanger. And so this is also the amount of work that goes into creating even just one look that you can really know, this is what it's gonna look like, right? Because on the day I think we shot maybe 10 different shoots in 6 different locations in just one day, so you have to be very, very prepared. And so this is the amount of planning that you have to have beforehand, so that on the day of, you're just going, you know everything already. So yeah, so you can see the clothing, the ukay-ukay with the Panay Bukidnon are really the stars of the show. Everything is built around it. And then you can create different energy depending on what people are wearing to tell the stories that you want. And so this is another kind of behind the scenes look of what it looks like to create that. These are portraits. I'm just gonna go quickly through the rest of the shoot. You can see them printed outside. They have little notes too. But these are the portraits. So Matanyon is a princess, one of the main princesses in a lot of the mythologies. So I wanted to do a portrait of her. This is a Phil-Am, what is the market called? Phil-Am Mart. Phil-Am Food Mart, where they sell, Filipino goods. It's so hard for me to get Filipino goods. I live in Brooklyn now, but hopefully next year I can move back to Queens. But I live in Brooklyn right now, and I have to travel 1.5 hours to buy any Filipino thing. So when I go to the grocery store, I have to really, you ask your friend, actually, can we go in a car so that I can buy all my things? Because on the train, you're gonna tons of stuff, and it's like annoying. So this is also showcasing, we were lucky during the shoot. It was around September, end of October was this shoot, so that's why all the paroles are up, because we know Filipino Christmas season starts in September. So the paroles were already up, which really added to the ambiance of the shoot, or the location, which I loved. And so yeah, this is also so ang hirap ng Filipino in the US, you cannot even buy groceries sometimes. So anyway, next. This is a portrait of Labao Dongon, who is also one of the heroes of a lot of the myths. This was taken in another restaurant that's upstairs. Dito naman, they like to go to this restaurant for Kamayan, and they have this nice display in the back. And so I really wanted it to look like he was outside playing harana, because he's always courting different women. So, he's always playing guitar, sorry. And so I wanted it to look like, I thought about it like, those old paintings of people doing harana. So I chose this location so that it looks like, he's outside in like a Filipino pastoral painting or something. Next slide. And then this is another storytelling, the same princess. She always getting courted by different types of people. This was outside. I think I saw you posting, there's a clip in one of the documentaries of Ezra putting up a poster on this wall, but we chose a different section with nothing. So this is just on the street of Woodside. And so I chose to do it all together like this, with the frame is not changing, but the poses are changing to emphasize the repetitiveness of one after another. These men are keeping proposing to her, and she has different things, but it's the same action, but just different reactions to the action, right? So these photos always will live together, is how I want them to be displayed, because that's the story that it's telling. Okay, next slide. And then one of the last ones that we did, this was taken this is a train station actually in New York. So this is the 61st Street Woodside train station. And if you go here, then pagbaba mo, you can already smell the Filipino barbecue, and there will be vendors there. So I like this train station, even though it's always under construction. But honestly, maybe that's also very Filipino of them. So the story of Masangladon and Matanyon, I have it here, this is someone she's trying to trick Matanyon to go down into the underworld. And so I chose, luckily the 61st Street station, there are 2 levels, and so there are more photos that you will see. I didn't put all of them, but this is my favorite one. So the action that we did for this was like, that you're really dragging her down, and that there are multiple levels to represent the overworld and the underworld, right? So there's movement in the shot, and we shot this from across the street through the phone. Outside of the frame, Mari, I think, is there, like, kind of telling them what to do, and so it was really fun. And I was used to shooting in the street because, again, sometimes I take photos of different actions, different mobilizations in the street. So actually, I'm very used to, when you're crossing the street, then you're gonna take photos there until the stop walk starts again or whatever. So this was really fun for me, and it was like I was like, wow, I really actually know how to shoot in the middle of the street. That's cool. So these are the photos that are represented or that are printed there, and I just wanted to go through them to share the intention behind them. It's really about storytelling, and again, I think the message I really wanted to impart through photography is that it's a very powerful medium, and that you as a photographer do hold a lot of power, and that to be aware of that. And so the stories that you want to tell, I think I told this on my Tuesday lecture. I know that maybe every day you're walking around this campus and you see it every day, and maybe it looks boring to you already, but I've never seen your campus, and I would rather see it through your eyes than someone else, maybe me, or, but even, at least I'm Filipino, but what if someone else comes and you don't know how they will depict your own stories? So I think, like Little Manila Queens, I used to live there, I walk there every day, but you can create your own stories and show them to people who have never seen them before, and I think that is the power that you can hold to reframe whatever narrative, to reframe whatever else anyone else is saying about you. You actually can control that, and that's the power of photography. And so that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Marian. Sobrang nakilala naman natin sila today. And of course, mas makikilala po natin sila, at we will be learning more from them right now.
Exactly, and it's very exciting. And this time, we're going to be telling you, be prepared for your questions, because this is your moment alongside our speakers. So with that, can we please invite all of our speakers to come up here on stage with us?
Yes, that's right. Kaya naman kung meron po tayong mga katanungan na gustong itanong sa ating mga speakers, this is your moment. So of course, for that, you may raise your questions, and of course, we will be entertaining them one by one. And you could also tell us to whom is the question addressed to. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, our speakers here on front. So yes, so right now we'll be passing the microphone to one of them. And of course, for the moderator of our open forum, because I'm very sure Ate Eman and I are going to have questions as well for ourselves. So right now we have Wissam here to guide us along the way of this open forum. Once again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, mic test.
Hello. Ayan. I think while the rest of our peers here are still preparing their questions, I would like to have a question from you po, if it's okay. Anyone could answer. So, one of the things po, actually, we were talking about it with Ate Eman kanina. One of the things po that I was curious about is that we're actually situated in an area where becoming an artist is kind of hard to do. It's mainly because of a lot of external variables that limits our mentality. So I think Miss Jacqueline also told us about this earlier. So I guess, or like an advice, tips po for people like us who would like to, try to extend the craft of Ukay initiatives and, for example, actually do the things that you're also doing to empower and to forward this cause. What kind of thing po ba yung pwede ninyo? What kind of advice could you tell us po? And especially being situated in this kind of scenario.
That's a great question. It's honestly like artists are kind of looked down on everywhere. And, I think I have to acknowledge that like I am in a very privileged position where for a while art was my job. I did make money by doing art. But I want to remind you that just because you don't make money from your art doesn't make you an artist, or doesn't not make you an artist. So you have a different job that makes you money, that helps you support your family, help you support yourself, and you do some sort of art on the side. You are just as much of an artist as everyone else. So I think, love your craft, love what you do. It doesn't have to be what you do to make money, and that doesn't invalidate you as an artist at all.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question. Like as Abby said, it's a real privilege, especially those of us in the U.S., to just say, I want to be an artist. And believe me, it was very difficult to tell my parents that, like, I'm going to go to art school. And then they're like, why not be a nurse? And, and then I guess I spent a lot of time thinking about this and trying to find, like, how to describe why I willingly chose to be an artist. And the thing is, for me, at least personally, it's different for everyone. The way that I think of like my relationship to art is that it's not a choice, actually. My earliest memory as a child is drawing pictures to describe everything I was experiencing and seeing. It was my primary way of communicating. And I think those of us who spend a lot of time with children know we're all artists, actually. And then it's really about how you think of your relationship to art, what you think art is. So when I hear that question, I hear it as like being an artist is someone who's a painter and shows things in a gallery or like with white walls, and that maybe somebody collects it and puts the artwork in a storage unit that collects dust, and that's it. But I think of being an artist as being a catalyzer. Meaning that, like, as Abby, I think, said in her presentation, you can create whatever, your imagination, like, I guess, like, whatever, I guess, well, what's the word? I'm losing my words. You imagine in your head, you can use your hands to make it. That's really powerful. And I think you could be an artist as an administrator, as a journalist, as a media person. As we looked at Marian's presentation, the photos, they're there on the wall outside, right? Because we wanted to offer a unique experience of experiencing art. But most of us here experience art on our phones. That's a meaningful, way to be an artist as well. And so it really depends, like, again, back to my framework that I shared at the beginning, it's like, what message are you trying to share? Is it for other people? For what kind of people? Is it just for you? And that doesn't make you less of an artist. It's just about, like, reflecting and why you want to use art and what it does for you and who it serves.
I agree with that because we do have a idea of what an artist is, yes, in galleries, but galleries are actually so sterile. They're very clean. It's like one empty room and like things on the walls. It can be very empty. So I actually think some of my favorite experiences as an artist is actually when your friends come to see your stuff, or when we all look at each other's work, you invite your friends. Some of my favorite moments as an artist is when we're just experiencing each other's work. So even if it's like, oh, my friend drew this, and then you go over to their place and you see it, and now that drawing is on my own wall. It never necessarily made it onto a gallery, but we support each other, and that is better than just meeting strangers who are like in an empty room, so I think I agree. I think we're all artists. I actually think all Filipinos are artists because we're some of the most creative people that I've ever known or met. Every one of us has some kind of creative skill. So even like a karaoke showcase night, that is kind of like, how is that any different than going to a concert? So there's other ways to really experience and curate your own art. It doesn't have to be for anyone else. Sometimes just for your closest friends or your family. And sometimes that's enough, and that's the best anyway. Yeah.
So on our end here at the back, we have one more question, and I think it's for all of you as well. So,
hello everyone. Good morning. I want to ask because I'm really curious, because out of all the beautiful places here in the Philippines, why did you choose our place, to be specific, Marawi City, for your Ukay initiatives?
That's a good story. It brings up wonderful memories. So last year, I was invited to present at Dialogo. It's a international research conference in Philippine studies in Manila. And so when I was presenting my academic paper, Atesor was there in the audience. And I was like, you look familiar. I think, I'm sure you're from Mindanao. And then, so I'm sorry, I did my presentation, Atesor and I talked, and then Atesor suggested an idea. It would be such a cool idea if we incorporate Mamandiang, onto, reusing, fabrics and crafts. And I said, Atesor, I think that sounds like a good collaboration to have. And then, so I sent her an email, we talked for a long time, almost maybe more than an hour on the bus, because we were bused from one location to another in Manila, and we just talk and talk. We chismis a little bit in the bus, and then we just exchange emails, and then we're here. Secondly is that Mindanao is my home. And I've spent 10 years or so, more than, 2015. I'm been bad at math. Almost years in the U.S. And every time I come home, I always miss home. And I was born and raised in Mindanao. And truly, this place is really special. And then, where do we want to bring this project to? Marawi. And that's why we're here.
Yeah, let's clap for Ezra being the Mindanaoan, yes. I just also want to add some extra context. I've been very privileged to exhibit as an artist here in the Philippines, in Manila and Panay. That's kind of how indirectly Renal and I met through a mutual friend, and also up in Ilocos. And the art world, if we're talking about the formal art world here in the Philippines, since this is the original question, the first question, everything is centered around Manila, and we know that's very problematic because there's so many cultures here in the Philippines. As a Bicolano, I know this to be true, and I also think there's so much misunderstanding about Mindanao. And I think that it's a wonderful place to launch our exhibition. This is the first place and first audience we get to share this with. And then I think I could speak for Filipinos in the US as well, right, Marian, that we, those of us who are in the community spaces, we have so much respect for Mindanao. Because of the fierceness, the courage that we have learned about from the outside. And I think that's a perspective that I think some other Filipinos and the rest of the Philippines forget or choose to misunderstand. And so, like us being here, we're just so proud to just say, like, we're in collaboration and community with people we really admire.
Yeah, I think there's also another question here.
I saw a movie, Segunda Mano. But my kids, they go to ukay-ukay stores, they rummage into, the arrivals. They buy ukay-ukay items. My question has to do with waste collection. Colonization. No? By promoting ukay-ukay, the way you present it, we can put ukay-ukay to good use it, to buy, to artistic uses, like what Inek has shared with us, using ukay-ukay to do it work. Is and we have this scheme for approaching problems, like we go to the root causes, because I think we admit that it is consumerism, inordinate consumerism, and the overproduction that it builds and causes the world that is destroying our world. That's why I'd like to know, what is your stand on ukay-ukay? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Po. Wow, that's a very powerful, compelling question. And I truly respect that you do not patronize ukay-ukay, and that is also a lot of Filipinos, also try to do. They want to support local businesses, entrepreneurship. Those are wonderful. To answer your question about what's our stance on ukay-ukay, I personally don't have a stance, what I am standing for is for those low-income communities, those poor people that get affected by these exploitative industries. And this is why we have this project to unravel the underlying roots of this problem. Ukay Ukay is just scratching the surface. There's so much deeper layers, many layers of problem that we need to talk about, we need to address. Waste colonialism, for example, it's such a complex concept and practice. It crosses borders, it crosses oceans, it crosses communities. And we just don't talk about, when we waste colonialism, we just don't talk about the practice of sending waste from other places to faraway places. It's also about how to manage them. This might be a segue from this project, but there's Jacqueline brought this up earlier in her slides, colonial mentality. There's a tendency to look to the West, to the global North, that everything seems better in the global North and everything's inferior here. That's not the case. We are different. Our practices and traditions are different. If we look up to a place where they would just heavily, this brings me back to two things. You know, when you say fast fashion brands, H&M, oh, social. No, not truly. And then there are ways there are also practices in the West that they use the technology that they so marketed very well that this is how you should do these things. For example, incineration. This is good. This can generate energy. No, that causes pollution. When you burn waste, that emits toxic gases. And if you have an incineration, for example, this is what I'm thinking about, waste colonialism. We look up to waste practices of the West, which is not truly always helpful, not truly effective. For example, there's waste incineration, that's always going to expect more feedstock, more garbage to burn. And that means we have to pollute more. And so we have to look inside within our communities what truly is the best, what's appropriate within our culture and our traditions. And that's my stand.
Thank you. I guess we'll each go. Yeah, okay, I think we'll each share, yeah. So I love that question because I think we should be asking each other that question. It's not just us, right? And I recognize that I'm an outsider here, and I know that we've met a lot of journalists in the audiences or in the past few days and media people, and as an artist, I kind of see that I'm just here to help you clarify what your point of view is, and then just like, here, this is a different perspective, maybe you can rethink like how you like enter an Ukay Ukay space. Right, and I guess personally for me, I was raised to not be wasteful. That's like something that my parents imparted on me, and then I think that just naturally I just don't like to like overconsume. And I also like I did used to work in the fashion industry. What I will say that like really compelled me to do this work is that I don't like that the fashion industry really manipulates us to think that we're not good enough. And that we think that like our self-worth is going to be coming through clothes, right? And so even though like I understand that it has created a meaningful economy and a lot of like jobs and support, like especially in our third documentary, we saw a woman who used Ukay Ukay to like help like improve the lives of not just her family but many other people. And so for me, I know it's a very nuanced, complicated issue, and like Ezra said, I'm here just to support the people who are being exploited by this system.
Hi, thank you, Jacqueline. I also have a very outsider's view of Ukay Ukay, and you know, I sort of grew up in my culture in the U.S. that, you know, donating clothes to a thrift store is just what you do when you're done with it, and I will admit to being a part of that waste colonialism mentality, because in the US, you fill a trash bag full of clothes, you drop it off at the Goodwill, and you never think about it again. And I think that's part of the layers of problems that Ezra was talking about. And I got to go to my very first Ukay Ukay on this trip, which was radicalizing, and seeing all of that clothing that is more than likely not going to go anywhere. And I think sort of making a point of using ukai-ukai in our art is not so much promoting it, but saying like, this is never all going to be sold. This is never all going to be used. There is just too much of it. So how can we divert that? You know, it's not necessarily saying everyone should shop at ukai-ukai. It's more saying like, let's figure out what to do with all of this, because it's impossible to do something, and it's already here. And you know, it's one thing to supply jobs for an economy, right? And it gives an option to folks who couldn't afford other clothes otherwise. And you know, part of this problem is that the clothes that we have access to today from the fashion industry are not made to have sex. They're not even really made to be worn one time. The fashion industry wants you to wear your clothes once, wash it, and then throw it away so that you can spend more money. And so even clothes in thrift stores are just getting less and less high quality and falling apart. They're not meant to be worn again. So I think that's sort of a complicated answer to my stance, where I just think it's very layered and there's a lot of problems. And you know, I think there's a lot of creative ways and a lot of creative people out there who are looking for ways to solve that problem.
Hi. Very good question. I heard you mention that in your peace curriculum, or the way that you teach, is that you try to get to the root problem of the issue. And I think that ukai-ukai is actually, when we ask ourselves if we support it or not, that is putting the onus and the problem onto the individual. And the problem with that we have the same kind of conversations in the US is that waste and the ways that we need to think about climate change and waste and the ways that it travels back into the global south. These are large problems, and my personal stance is that the root problem is actually the United States, imperialism and capitalism and overproduction and consumption, because there actually is no reason that the United States should be even sending their trash to other people. Even in your presentation to other states, or even especially to the Philippines. And I also saw an ukai-ukai for the first time, and it was also very radicalizing that there is leather jackets being sold amongst other things here. So that's not going to be for your people. That is truly, the United States said, no, basura na to, wag na, whatever, right? So I think addressing the root problem is actually that, and I think the root problem is the systemic issues that are plaguing us, and that's what we need to be targeting, because the #1 polluter actually in the whole world is the United States military, and that's just a fact. And it's not, that's exponentially larger, their pollution, than any one of us can produce in 1,000,000 of our lifetimes. And so to me, that is the root problem. If you're gonna talk about root problems, that's my personal stance. And ukai-ukai actually, yes, are providing people, low-income people, they can buy clothes and whatever. But it is kind of a layered issue, but just to answer your question.
Okay. Actually, napakaganda ng tanong ni Ma'am, at sasagutin ko ito ng napaka-pure kung paano talaga namin tinitingnan sa community ang ukay, no? So meron kasi tayong mindset as Filipino na para sa amin sa kabundukan, kung para sa iba o para sa tao dito sa lowland, yun ay sobra, yun ay basura, but for us it's not. Yun ay pangangailangan namin, sapagkat marami ang hindi sa amin kayang bumili ng damit. Marami kang makikita sa kabundukan na kahit punit ng damit ay gagamitin pa rin kasi wala nang magamit. So kung para sa iba yun ay sobra, para naman sa amin yun ay pagpupuna ng aming mga kailangan sa mga bagay na hindi namin kailangang gumasto ng malaki.
That is a very powerful question. In our community, we really look look at ukay-ukay through the mindset of Filipinos, especially us who live in the mountains, and we try to look at those who live in the lowlands. In the mountains, we don't look at in the lowlands, they tend to have more than us who live in the mountains, and not a lot of us can purchase clothes. Not a lot of us can afford clothes, and we even wear clothes that are really worn and have holes in them. And when we are able to have access to those clothes from ukay-ukay, it actually supplements our needs.
Kaya pag merong dumarating sa amin sa bundok na halimbawa merong magbibigay ng itong mga ukay ito ng mga damit, pamimigay natin sa mga katutubo sa bundok, tuwang-tuwa silang lahat. Nag-aagawan na kumuha ng mga damit. Kasi para sa kanila, hindi yun basura, kundi para sa kanila, yun ay mga branded items. At mahilig tayong Filipino kasi. Meron kasi tayo minsan pag-iisip na, ay, para sa kanila, ay, nasuot yun na to, luma na yan. Para sa atin, ay, hindi pa to luma, o tingnan mo ang bagong-bago, o wala pang mga mansya. Pag bumibili tayo ng sapatos, kahit na ito'y second hand, parang brand new lang yung dating. Kailangan kong suotin ito, pag malaki, pag mayroong mga okasyon, susuotin ko. Kasi mahilig tayo sa aming wika, ang tawag namin, pag tikal-tikal ba? Pag malaki yung
and we don't see them as old garments. We don't see them as old, but we even tend to wear them on special occasions. Pagtikal-tikal ba? That means that we are proud of things that may seem like a surplus to other folks from the lowlands, but those are actually worth a lot more to us. And I'm actually an indigenous from the lowland, but the superpower that I have is that I'm able to bridge the mentality between the lowland and those who live in the mountains. Yeah.
I agree with Ezra that indeed there are no easy answers. We're faced with a very complex problem. But I cannot readily accept that tone of detected in the comment of Abby. I agree that ukay-ukay can be put to various uses, no? And in fact, I admire your work designing Broadway costumes using ukay-ukay materials. But when it comes to culture, no? I'm sorry, Rinel, In fact, naiiyak ako sa sinabi mo na pag may dumating na mga ukay-ukay dun sa lugar nyo, tuwang-tuwa ang mga tao kasi barato na, tapos branded ba, mga Calvin Klein or whatever. Siguro mag-ingat tayo sa paggamit ng ukay-ukay. Hindi ko matanggap yung resignation kasi nandiriyan na yan eh. So tanggapin na lang natin, no? Yung sinabi mo yung gamitin ng ukay-ukay for embroidery work. Although, yes, may nakikita din ako na like promoting your culture. It's your way of making your culture known to other groups of people, no? Kasi yung gumagamit ng ukay-ukay nga na merong embroidery work, no? Kaya lang may nawawala rin eh. And that's what I'm worried about. Originality, authenticity, yung talagang traditional, yung sariling atin, yun din ang nasa sacrifice. Ito, may dala akong malong isusuot ko sana, no? Kasi we talked about manufacturing things, using machines now. All right, ito, this is an example of a modern malong, all right, made with machine. Sayang hindi ko nadala yung original ko kasi mahal na eh. So I treasure that, tinatago ko. Ganun na way or attitude, parang I feel na we're making a compromise. May nawawala sa atin. Yun talaga, our weavers, wala na sila. Kasi anong laban nila sa mass production? Sa gawa sa makina. So yung originality ng mga tao natin, yun ang nasa-sacrifice. Nawawala tunay na sariling atin. That is our unique contribution to world heritage. Yung sariling talaga. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. So, for transparency, we're not resigning to 100% full-on promoting ukay-ukay. Like I mentioned earlier, we're just scratching the surface. And I too mourn the loss of livelihood, especially in our traditional weaving, our domestic practices of making garments. And personally, I would not blame us individual consumers. I don't want to blame our neighbors who just really want to fully express themselves through those things. But I want to blame are those who holds power up there, who makes all these policies, who makes all these major decisions that are impacting our lives. And if we try to do things to hold those at the top, be accountable, so that we can formulate policies that can help our neighbors, that can help our indigenous communities to survive, to receive the dignity that they deserve, then I think what I think that we should be doing.
Actually, ma'am, agree ako talaga sa sinabi mo na talagang marlaki ang mawawala sa atin at experience na namin nun sa community. We don't have backstrap loom. Ngayon, talagang totally nag-vanish. At nawala yun during mga, I think, martial law era and before that. Kasi parating mayroong kaguluhan, so wala nang time yung mga ninuno namin para gumawa. At may isa, wala nang marunong gumawa sa buong community, sa buong Panay. Meron kaming naiwan na tela at iisang piraso na lang ang alam ko na nandyan. Yung panubok, wala nang mga lumang panubok ang natitira. Swerte ako kasi yung isa sa gawang 1950 na sa akin pa. At Yun din ang napakalaking challenge namin ngayon. Actually, kung titingnan nyo, this is not literally the traditional attire of the Panay Bukidnon. Long time ago, we don't have fabrics.
Sorry.
Sorry.
That's okay. Sorry.
Okay.
I agree with you, ma'am. We actually lose a lot. Actually, in my community, we don't have a backstrap loom. They vanished during martial law. Right now, in our during that time, no one knows how to make those traditional garments in my community. And so far, only one traditional fabric is left. And I got lucky that I have that piece. Only one panubok left from the 1950.
Actually, hindi ito yung traditional na Panay Bukidnon. Yung long sleeve, yung pants, hindi ganito. Dati walang tela ang Panay Bukidnon, kaya ang ginagamit ay bahag na gawa sa balat ng kahoy. Nung dumating, unti-unting dumarating ang tela sa kabundukan, nagkaroon kami ng, nagkaroon ng yung mga ninuno namin ng idea na yung tela gawing bahag. Kaya may makikita ka ng mga pictures ng Panay Bukidnon na nakabahag talaga ng daluyot, merong nakabahag ng tela. Ang panubok, marami ng kulay. Pero noon, iisa lang ang kulay. Kasi ang ginagawa, ang mga patadyong na nabibili nila sa ibang community, tinatastas para kunin yung sinulid. At yun yung ibuburda sa mga damit. Wala kaming tela, kaya ang ginagamit noon ay abaka, hinahabi, ginagawang birang. At masasabi ko na isa ito sa mga example ng reinvented culture actually. Binangon para mabigyan ulit ng identity ang community. Kaya nung nagpulong-pulong yung mga matatanda namin, nung in-recognize na ng National Commission for Culture and the Arts at ng ibang ahensya ng gobyerno na Panay Bukidnon is one of the indigenous people ng Pilipinas, tinanong sila nung isang anthropologist, ano ba ang gusto nyong suotin na to represent your community?
Suspense. Actually, this is what I'm wearing. It's not traditional Bukidnon. It's a sorry, I got lost. Okay. Before, in the old days, Panay Bukidnon would wear just a loincloth to cover their below the waist areas. Actually before, Panubok only uses like minimalistic colors. There wasn't a lot of colors back in the days, and now there's so many. And back in the days, we don't actually use, fabric that we buy from the stores. We actually make them on our own using abaka fiber. And right now, as an example, what I'm wearing right now, it's actually an example of a reinvented culture. And so recently, our elders gathered together and then would meet with city agencies. And then there came an anthropologist who came to our community and was asking questions.
So, sumagot yung mga elders na nahihiya kaming magsuot ng bahag. Yes. At nalungkot ako nung nalaman ko yung nangyari na yun dati. Sabi nila, susuotin namin yung sinusuot namin tuwing espesyal na okasyon. At ito yung sopa at ang sarawal. Pagkatapos, yung mga panubok, nilagay sa mga damit. Actually, medyo naiyak ako kanina nung pinakita yung video. Yung isa sa mga matatandang babae doon, patay na yun, matagal na. Ni isa sa mga anak niya walang gustong gumawa ng panubok that time. Pinagtatawanan nila yung matanda, every gumagawa ng panubok. Para kayong baliw, anong gagawin nyo? Sinong bibili niyan? Ang pangit naman ng yan. Wala mang bibili niyan. At yung matanda hindi nakikinig sa kanyang mga anak, sige lang siyang gumawa. Nung namatay ang nanay, at marami ang nakakilala sa Panay Bukidnon, marami na ang gusto ng panubok. Kung ano lang yung nalaman nila at nakita nila, yun na lang ang alam nilang iburda. At naiiyak minsan yung, parang tinuring ko na siyang parang tatay kasi tumira ako sa akin. Sinasabi na sa akin, alam mo, Noy, sabi sa akin, alam mo, nagigilty ako sa sarili ko, bakit ko pinagtatawanan si nanay. Ngayon naintindihan ko na Na dapat pala, nung buhay siya, tinanong ko siya ng marami. Nung buhay siya, dapat pala inaral ko. Ngayon, wala na akong mapapagtanungan. At parang namatay na rin kalahati ng katawan ko kasi hindi ko na alam kung ano ba talaga ang tunay, ano ba talaga yung iba pang kwento sa likod ng mga bagay na ito. At yun ay hindi ko na alam.
So elders in my community right now, there was a time when they feel really embarrassed wearing just a cloth, just below the waist. Actually, I felt so emotional when I watched one of the first film, and I saw one of our elders, a woman, and she actually passed recently. And that made me feel really sad remembering that. And what made me even feel more sad is that none of her family even knows how to embroider. And I remember the younger members in her family would tell her she's crazy. Like, why are you embroidering still? And that now reflects really that not a lot of people in the community even knows Panubok. But when she passed away, then there came the time that Panubok practice embroidery became even more embraced by the community. But so that's when I had a conversation with one of our family members. He felt so guilty. He started asking questions: why did I not even try to ask her? Why did not even try to learn from her? He had so many regrets, and it felt like half of his body just went away and just felt so numbed.
Last na kasi parang napakahaba. Tungkol naman doon sa ukay, actually, parang hindi ko siya tinitake na ay pinopromote ko yung ukay talaga na gamitin or something. Para sa amin kasi, kung meron mang ibang way na mai-promote namin, maipakita ang beauty ng aming embroidery, then ang way na yun ay makakatulong din sa amin, then bakit hindi namin gawin? Kasi ang mas iniisip namin ngayon na mas mahalaga nahuhuli na kami sa linya. Kailangan naming humabol. Kaya yung mga ukay-ukay, binubordahan namin, binabenta, pero wala kang makikitang panaybukin doon sa community tuwing special occasion na nagsusuot nun. Sinusuot nila yung damit na ukay-ukay, pero yung nilagyan ng borda at suotin sa community for special occasion, parang hindi siya maganda sa mata ng buong community actually. Kahit na ako, sumayaw ka nga lang na naka-short, papababain ka dun sa ibabaw ng sayawan kasi hindi maganda sa mata. Kaya hindi rin kami natatakot na mawala itong tradisyon na ito kasi ang buong community aware na ito ang tama. At alam namin na kahit maganda yan, kahit na ginagawa natin yan, pero para sa atin, hindi yan karapat-dapat sa atin. Ginagawa natin yan para makatulong sa ating pamumuhay. Ginagawa natin yan para maipakita ang kakaiba nating kultura. Pero alam natin na meron dapat bigyan natin ng limitasyon yung ating sarili na yung mga bagay na yan ay hindi pwede sa atin. Kaya nga, tama yung sinabi mo, ma'am, na ngayon marami tayong kompetensya, mayroong mga machine-made. At ganoon din sa amin ngayon, unti-unti nang rumarami. Pagpasok mo ng bintahan ngayon ng mga tela, may makikita kang lahat na ng design andyan na sa mga tela. Kaya pag meron akong nakikitang sumusuot, pinupuna ko. Saan yun nabili yan? At yung gumagawa talagang pinapadalhan namin ng sulat, pinapadalhan namin ng mga reklamo na huwag yung gawin yan kasi para sa amin, parang ninanakaw ninyo sa amin ang kultura at pagkakilanlan namin. Yan lang po. Thank you.
To be transparent, I personally don't promote ukay-ukay. For us, we use ukay-ukay really as a tool, as a means, as a medium to promote our culture, to promote the beauty of our culture. That's why we do it. And like I said earlier, we really have to try to keep up with the modern times. We have to innovate. We have to adjust. And so that's why we embroider our patterns on ukay-ukay. Even right now, there are younger Panubok people, they wear shorts, and that's okay. Because we know we're not afraid that our tradition will disappear. We know what is right. We know what to do. We are self-aware. we recognize, we know the limitations of such practices. For example, when we see somebody wearing a machine-made panubok embroidered item, if I see one, I talk to them and I give them a compliment. That is so beautiful. And I would ask them, where'd you get that from? And that is because that's come from a place of understanding. But if I recognize then that's a problem, there's an issue, then I bring it up and we try to take action.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, that was a really productive exchange of words because we get to see two perceptions about culture here on how culture has been ever-evolving concept of the society and of our communities, not just here in our modernization, but also even way before. And also we get to see and hear the importance of still knowing what and also the authenticity of the things. So ladies and gentlemen, since we restrict the time constraints, we will be catering to one last question coming from our ma'am here.
Hello po. Wait lang. I'm so sorry. Give me a minute. Good day po, Ate Marion, Ate Ranel, Kuya Ranel, Ate Abby, Ate Jacqueline, and Kuya Ezra. My name is Nachma Didima. I am a first-year AB journalism student here in Mindanao State University. My mother is a boutique owner here in Marawi City, a hardworking one at that. And ever since I was young, all I've ever worn were her products. Memorized ko pa, Hijira, Penny, Hana, and then yung heels kay Pretty Lace. And it's a love and hate relationship because quite frankly, I'm a huge fan of Ukay Ukay. Kasi as I've gotten older, I've begun to explore other sources of clothes, fashion, and whatnot. This caused a bit of quarrel between me and my mother, particularly because I've become gravitated towards ukay-ukay. Kasi marami talagang finds. There are a lot of hidden gems in ukay-ukay, not just from the Western fashion, but from Thailand fashion, from ano yung isang place, basta I've forgotten it. Kasi nakita ko kasi yung brand and I looked it up and nandun siya doon. Basta I think sa Europe lang yun, somewhere in Spain, yung brand. Not sure, ma'am. So, yun nga, I love my mom very, very much, but she can be a bit of a possessive person and prideful person sometimes. I mean, to be fair, yun nga yung business namin. So, I guess it is a slap in the face na, ba't ka pa nagukay-ukay, may mga damit naman tayo. But then again, the heart wants what it wants. Anyway, my question po is, how do I explain to her that the concept of ukay-ukay is a good thing, more or less, and how do I convince her into not getting mad every time I come home with a bag of clothes from ukay-ukay stores?
Sige. Minsan kasi, marami tayong boundaries. Boundary between the parent and the child, boundary between culture, boundary between politics, napakarami nating boundary. At minsan, ang boundary na yon ang nagiging rason kung bakit tayo nakakaroon ng misunderstanding. And the only way, para sa akin na this is my personal point of view, the only way to achieve na hindi kayo mag-aaway, hindi kayo magkaroon ng problema is try to look the other side, no? Intindihin mo muna bakit galit ang nanay mo. Ano kaya yung nakikita niya na hindi mo nakikita, bakit siya galit? Then, ipakita mo din sa nanay mo ang hindi niya nakikita na nakikita mo. Kasi, parati kong ginagamit na example yan is 2 tao na tumitingin sa 5 piso. Hindi mo pwedeng i-encourage ang kaharap mo na yan ay hari kasi ang nakikita niya sa kabila ay corona. Ganon din sa kabila, hindi mo siya maaring i-encourage nang nakikita niya ay corona kasi ang nakikita mo ay hari. Ang kailangan yung dalawa ay magpalitan ng pwesto para makita niyo at maintindihan na totoo nga pala may hari at corona ito. Totoo nga pala, may mabuti at di mabuting dulot ito. At kaya nyo at saka nyo pag-usapan, ano kaya ang kondisyon nating dalawa? Para at least, kahit papaano, meron kayong kondisyon at magkakaroon kayo ng limitasyon. So alam na ng nanay mo bakit ka ganyan kasi naintindihan niya na at meron kayong kondisyon. At pag alam mo na pag yung kondisyon na yun ay lumagpas ka doon, magkakaroon kayo ng gulo. So yun lang. Thank you.
That is a difficult question. But I think my thought of that for that is that recognize the boundaries between the mother and the daughter. Recognize the boundaries between cultures and of places, and sometimes those boundaries actually cause misunderstanding. And my way of my advice or suggestion is that try to look to the other side, understand the other side better, understand why your mother gets mad, and then show her why you do what you do, and really try to encourage to see each other's points of view. And then maybe you can swap places to understand each other's place, and then to identify the good and the bad, and set up conditions between you two, and recognize limitations. Be aware of them.
The good news is that daughters and mothers always fight. Inevitable, I think. Because I used to also have a lot of disagreements with my mom, and I said, we're just never gonna get along. And then someone told me, actually, that's just normal, the arguments. So that's the good news, that's just normal. But maybe my advice is take her with you maybe one time, or maybe shop for her one good outfit, and then what will happen? Maybe then she'll say, okay, fine, I understand, cute naman pala tong outfit na nakuha mo sa akin, hindi ko magawa to, or something. Like maybe something she cannot make, then you found it for her in the ukay-ukay. Or bring all your friends and you do one fashion show na, diba, maganda naman yung mga na sinusuot namin, like that. I don't know, bring her into your world, I think, and then maybe then she'll understand. And then also, by the same token, maybe your friends can also do fashion show of her line, so then she's also can see she's also in your world. Different things. So that's my advice.
Same. This is interesting because we were just sort of talking about how difficult it is to support ukay-ukay in a way, and recognizing the bad parts of it, and now it's sort of we're asked to use the other side of our brain and talk about the good parts of it. And I think there's so much fun and creativity and youth and enjoyment that you can get out of ukay-ukay, and I see that passion in your question. And I think as long as that comes through, and your mother sees that, it'll be supported. And I agree with what Marianne said, bring her in, show her that passion, show her how fun it can be, and I think she'll be into it.
I guess the only thing I'd like to circle back to in my presentation is the concept of abundance mindset. What's clear, even though you have different ideas about what clothes you should be wearing or consuming, you both love clothes, and that's the common thing there. And maybe you tell your mom, I'm just doing exactly what you're doing, but in my own way, and it doesn't mean I love your clothes less. It's just I'm also trying to find my own way to change, to have my own relationship to it. And then maybe that's the common thread. Is that fun? Okay, anyways, that's it.
Do you have any advice, Ezra?
Okay. Hello. Yeah, last question na lang po ito from Miss Ash. Ayan. Sorry. It's past 12 already.
I understand Ma'am Beka where she's coming from when it comes to, her issues on the originality, when it comes to the cultural items, no? And at the same time, Ma'am Beka, Dr. Rebecca Alawi, I also understand Renel and his people's, thought when it comes to, moving with the changing times. Renel and I had a moment yesterday with the embroidery workshop. So we come from different cultures, but we share a lot of cultural values, very similar, Manao and from where he's coming from. And he did mention yesterday, as well as I think today, about how Panubok died sometime in the martial law. And then we are seeing Renel now, donning his cultural attire, the traditional, as well as Abby is wearing one. So I'm very, very proud of your work and your people's work. Now, maybe this question is very light, unlike the very riveting question of Dr. Rebecca Alawi. Maybe we can learn from your insights from this question. Since sometime in World War II, not World War II, no, martial law time, it died, the Panubok art and craft. So how are you able to revive and at the same time engage the young people, the younger generation to once again go back to your craft and hopefully, perpetuate, if I could still use the term perpetuate, the beautiful craft of your people. Because as what I've said, we share the same cultural values and even craft. I really enjoy how you taught me the Panubok way. I was so proud posting it in my FB, by the way. And maybe the younger audience here, as well as we in the middle ground, can do something for our own people, because we also have the same, I think, problem and issues when it comes to handing down this, the skills, the crafts of our ancestors, okay? So maybe with your answer, we can learn a lot so that we can also invite the younger generation, even ourselves, because most of us are going to the universities, into Gaya, one of the cultural centers of Lanao del Sur. When I interviewed years ago, fathers who are into the craft, okay? One of the fears was that their kids no longer want to continue what they're doing because they want to go to school, to studies, to the university, and then eventually the craft, the artistry, and everything that's there would die out. So that's actually one of the fears that we have, especially for us who are very concerned with our culture. That's why I understand, Ma'am Beka, how she expressed yung idea niya kanina, because she's a staunch, promoter of our culture in the same way that I do feel the same way. So how are you able to revive and at the same time engage, most especially the younger generation of your people? Thank you.
Thank you din po sa napakagandang katanungan. Actually, hindi naman specifically na martial law lang yung war. Actually, lahat ng war naging reason ng bakit nawala yung tradition. The saipang, hindi siya ganito nung una. It is a see-through cloth. At sa loob nun, mayroong tinatawag na koton. Parang short sleeve at sa ibabaw ng pusod yung haba at tinatabunan nyo nung see-through. Kasi sa ibabaw ng puso, kasi ang patadyong mahaba hanggang dito. So dapat hanggang dyan lang yung damit kasi lalagyan pa yan ng belt na coins. No? So hindi yan yung dati-rati talaga na itsura ng saipang. So yan ay parang saipang ang tabas, pero ang tela hindi na see-through at meron na siyang borda. Actually, ang panubok ay hindi nilalagay sa saipang, kundi doon sa inner na cloth na sinusuot. Yun din ang problema namin, ma'am, kasi marami din ang namamatay namin ng mga kultura. At kung ako lang yung tatanungin, after 20 years, maybe another 10% ang mawawala. Isa sa mga, maliban sa panubok, isa sa mga talagang pinakaayaw ko mawala is the music. Because for me, the music is the secret language of the community. For me. Sapagkat we can do communication with music, even though it's not words. But we can do communication. We can court with music. Diba? Ginagamit natin yun sa courtship. So, mayroon kaming malaking problema kasi most of our traditional musical instruments namamatay na. Merong isang instrument na isa na lang ang marunong tumugtog. Yung litgit, yung bamboo fiddle, si Nanay Lucia na lang marunong magtugtog sa buong community. Merong marunong gumawa, pero age 60 years old up. So, natatakot kaming mamatay yung ganong kultura.
Okay, sorry. We don't. It wasn't just martial law or the war that caused our culture or the practice to disappear. Actually, before the kind of fabric that we use are see-through cloth, and the kind of cut is that there's a cut and then it would be like above the belly button. But right now we no longer use a see-through cloth, as you see what Abby's wearing right now, and there's a lot more designs. And I fear that 10 or 5 or 10 years from now, 10% of our cultures will disappear, and I'm really afraid that our music will also disappear. That's even a more of a concern, and we have a big problem. But I think if you can answer, like, how do you cultivate, how do you perpetuate your culture? Yeah.
So ang ginawa namin ganito, meron akong kasamang isang professor, isa siyang ethnomusicologist, sabi na sa akin, Renel, gusto kong gumawa tayo ng ganito. At sabi ko sa gustong-gusto ko. Kasi alam kong isa yun sa mga paraan para mabuhay ang kultura at mahikayat ang mga bagong kabataan. Una, gumawa kami ng documentation. Ang title ng book ay Pamasad Pamanday, Organological Studies in Panay Bukidnon Traditional Musical Instruments. So, step paano gawin yung instrument, nilagay doon. Ano yung ganito yung material, lahat, ano yung mga spiritual beliefs sa mga ganito, lahat, every instrument isa-isa. Nabuo yung aklat. Sabi niya sa akin, meron na tayong aklat on how to do instrument. Ngayon, ang problema natin, paano tugtugin yan? The UP Visayas, yung una, grant ng NCSA, yung project. Yung UP Visayas nagbigay sa amin ng another grant. Yun yung ginamit namin para mag-create naman ng manual how to play every instrument. So, gumawa kami ng manual kung paano siya tugtugin. Merong 3 uri ng pedagogy how to teach. No? Merong traditional way, para na kahit bata maintindihan. So yung sinulat ko doon, ako yung naglagay ng notation, T and W, the tuo in the wala. Paano ba magtugtog gamit ang tuo at ang wala? Yun, nilagay ko doon. So, merong So, meron yan doon. At hindi kami naglagay ng standard or this is the only traditional way of playing the specific rhythm. Lahat ng version na makikita sa community, inilagay namin. Kasi iniisip namin na pag maglalagay lang kami ng isang version, magkakaroon ng conflict in the future. Because sasabihin ng mga bata, yan yung sinulat sa libro that's the traditional. Kailangan natin sundin. Ay, mali yung sa kabilang community, mali yung pagtugtog nila, mali yan. So, ayaw namin magkaganon. So, lahat ng version ng every community inilagay at kinukonsider ang lahat ng version as traditional and authentic. Kasi wala mang isa sa atin na makapagsabi na yan talagang tama. Wala man tayong may pakitang ebidensya kung paano yung talaga ang tamang pagtugtog. Kasi minana lang naman kung paano tayo tinuruan orally. So, palay natin, merong nabawas, merong nadagdag, at hindi natin alam. Minsan, natututo tayo sa pakikinig lang. Hindi natin alam kung merong nababawas, kaya hindi kami naglagay ng standard. All versions, inilagay dun sa book. At happy kami na yung book ay ginagamit na ngayon at hinihandang gamitin for the School of Living Traditions. Para na maituro sa bataan at bibigyan ng copy ang Department of Education para sa kanilang Indigenous People's Education. Kasi ayaw sila lang yung mag-iisip-isip ng kung ano-ano. Gusto namin na galing sa community yung indigenous knowledge system and practices na gagamitin nila. At yun ay validated ng lahat ng mga cultural masters and elders ng community. Kaya hindi magkakaroon ng problema. So yun, at hinihikayat namin lahat ng bata, hindi lamang sinasabihan namin sila na matuto kayo kasi kultura nyo ito, kasi mahirap. Kaya sabi ko sila, kung gusto nyong matuto ng kultura, huwag nyo siyang pag-aralan as a skill. You need to embody the culture. Because pag ito'y pinag-aralan mo lang na parang skill or talent, pwede mo siyang kunin sa isip mo at itapon at palitan ng iba. But if you embody the culture, hindi mo yan makukuha sa iyong soul. Kasi every time na nakikinig ka ng music, gumagalaw ang katawan mo. Pag may nakikinig ka ng music, alam ko yung tugtog na yan, gusto ko rin tumugtog. So, sabi ko sa kanila, pag-aralan nyo at i-embody. Kasi yan ang kayamanan na hindi maaring nakawin, hindi yung ginto na pwedeng kuhanin. Ang yaman sa utak, ang kaalaman natin sa ating kultura. Hindi man pwedeng kunin nila utak natin, nilagay sa utak nila. So yan ang yaman na dapat nating ipagpatuloy hanggang sa katapusan ng panahon.
The way we did it, sorry, the way is that first is there was a professor that we collaborated, and first is that we made a documentation. We called it Pamasag Panday, and then we documented a step-by-step instructions on how to use an instrument. We documented every instrument. And then now that we have a book, that project was actually funded by the National Commission for the Culture and the Arts. Then the second one, then we received another grant. And what we used with that grant is that we created a manual. And with that manual, we aspire that every children should learn how to use and play an instrument. And we even broke it down to the very basics. How to use your left hand to play this, how to use your right hand to play that. And we included a Western notation, especially that would be useful for the academe, for research. But we don't set any standards. There are no restrictions because we know we want to accommodate, we want to welcome everyone. So a child can play. We made sure that there would be many versions, so that, for example, when a child would start asking like, well, I can't play this because this was taught by this. No, we don't want that. We want them to play all the versions. Again, there are no standards, and what we did with that book is that we started using that. We started promoting that, integrating that into the School of Living Traditions. We talk with officials and educators from the Department of Education so that they can incorporate that knowledge, that book, into the curriculum in public schools and private schools. And it was validated by the cultural workers and cultural bearers in our community. And lastly, what I want to say is that we try to encourage everyone that not to learn a skill, but to embody that culture. Once you embody that culture, that cannot be taken away from your soul, and that means that would equate to wealth, treasure wealth in your knowledge.
I love that question because it kind of circles back to why we're all here as part of this Ukay initiative. So what I remember from your question is how do we promote, like the local or the cultural fashion or like attire? And then I think from what, like the translation I got, it was a beautiful answer from Ronel about more like the politics of identity and how you preserve that and importantly, when it comes to clothes, they know how to create an emotional connection, and they know how to make it look cool. Like, I was like, we put the clothes on the mannequins. You saw it in the documentary. They look beautiful on the mannequins because they're just beautifully like embroidered. But what makes it even better is that Marian brought like her beautiful friends and then did these beautiful photos, and then it made it even more cool and interesting. So it's like recontextualizing. It doesn't compromise what the traditions are. It just, further shows that the collaboration and bringing artists in to solve this sort of problem is actually really meaningful. I think that would
And thank you for the MSU Maranao Cultural Heritage Center.
All right, so I guess that concludes the third day of our event. Thank you so much to all of our guests for sharing with us all of your insights. Kaya naman, also thank you for the questions. Sadly, we couldn't entertain all of them, but hopefully we'll have a different chance on a different day to ask and learn more from our speakers.
Exactly. Unfortunately, we just have time constraints for
Yeah.
this. But still, we are highly and really, really grateful for all the time that you have given us. This
Kaya naman, palakpakan para sa ating mga speakers. Thank you so much for sharing with us your learnings. And of course, tomorrow we will have an exhibit open for you right here at the Maranao Cultural Heritage Center. So don't forget to invite your friends and please be here to see firsthand the different and beautiful arts we prepared for you. All right?
Exactly.
Kaya naman, I think we would still have a time for a photo opportunity.
Can we have time for you to take a picture? So can the artists please go down na lang po tayo? So photographer
Dito na lang pabandon ba? Or dito na lang tayo?
Para kasama si audience. Kaya ba si audience? Kasha the
I think the artist could stay here po.
Yeah.
And then by group na lang po tayo daw. Ayan. Yes, of course, because we have guests here coming from
DepEd
Iligan. Ayan.
Our own staffs. Alright, so for the first batch, let us all invite.
Yes po. Pwede po tayo.
First row na lang kung gusto. First row, then second, then
Yeah, also inviting Ma'am Sor to be here as well. Yeah, DepEd Iligan daw po. Ayan, from DepEd Iligan. If we could have the opportunity to have a photo ops with our guests. Ayan. Because of course, a chance of a lifetime na ito siya dahil magkakaroon tayo ng remembrance naman sa ating mga guests who came so far just to teach us the different arts and the different ways we could champion our culture.
Right? And also ngayon lang na pag-iisipan ko to hanggang nakikinig ako dito sa discussion nila.
Yeah.
I think there's the biggest lesson na makukuha natin dito. Please proceed lang po sa front. Culture
Exactly, and also how we could make a difference, especially in combating waste management, which is a very big issue right now
Exactly.
on a
And
global
also parang
scale.
cultural preservation. Ayan,
That is
parang
right.
ready na sila.
Ayan.
Ayan.
So, I think may space pa po ata dito. Pwede po tayong ayan, ayan. Okay. So, tayo ngayon.
Ayan, para may symmetry tayo.
Yes. Direct. Ayan, dinedirect na tayo.
Come closer daw, like you like each other daw.
Marian, yes, Marian's.
Come
closer
closer daw.
like we like each other. Ayan.
Alright. Thank you very much, DepEd Iligan, for this opportunity. Ay, okay, wait. May pahaba. One camera.
Ay, okay. Sorry.
Alright.
Naiwanan.
Siyempre naman, for full opportunity na rin.
And of course, inviting as well to join in the photo opportunity. Ready na kayo mga friends at ismile yun ang pinakamaganda ninyong ngiti.
Alright,
Dahil
thank
kayo
you
na
so
ang
much,
next.
DepEd
Ayan.
Iligan. Okay,
Punta na po
students,
tayo sa
come
ating
up
mga
here.
students. Ayan. Thank you so much po, our guests from DepEd Iligan, for gracing us with your presence today and learning from us right now.
All right, students, come up na here on stage.
Of course, to our participants, you may claim your certificate from our beautiful Ma'am Mayang over there. Hi, Ma'am Mayang. Ayan.
And the students are getting ready na rin dito on stage.
Yes, that's right. Ayan. And of course, meron rin po tayong prepared na lunch sa likuran. Kaya before you leave, you may claim your lunch po. Ay, of course, kasama kami. Ayan, thank you so much. And right now, the faculty members of our university.
Team members ng ating staff even. I love the design of cultural outfits from our staff university. From the Palestinian hijab style to the landap na mga Maranao.
That's
I
right.
love it so
Ayan.
much.
Again, pwede po nating maklaim ang ating mga certificates kay Ma'am Mayang over there. And of course, we also have our lunch distribution right at the back. So please do not forget to claim your lunches.
Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you so
once
much
again.
for attending. And please do not forget to visit us tomorrow because we will have a exhibit opening.
And
That's
last
right.
ngayon siya tomorrow. And once again, this would be not sure kung this year lang to or next year.
That's right.
Okay, in 3, 2, 1. Yan, napakaganda talaga ng ating staff members ng university. Alright, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And of
Thank
course,
you so much.
thank you to our guests.
Thank you so much po for the hours of flight from New York City to Mindanao or Philippines even. Thank you so much.
All right, so once again, that concludes our event. My name is Faiza Ala.
And I am Iman D. Pangkatan, your master of ceremony for this
Day 3. Warn worlds, acts of repair, and threads of peace in the wake of discard. Again, pwede po nating maklaim ang ating mga lunch na nasa likuran dahil hinanda po yan para sa inyo ni Ma'am Mayang. Wow, joke lang. Ni Ma'am Sor.
Ma'am Sor. Thank you so much po. Once again, ingat po sa daan.
And wassalam.
Wassalam.